Mayor Pro Tem,
Here.
Councilmember Charette. Here. Councilmember Reynoso is not present. Councilmember Calvin.
Present.
Councilmember Alexander is present. And Mayor Valdivia is absent.
Thank you. And then we do have one public speaker. We have Treasurer Ortiz.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to talk about item number 1 in closed session, which is the downtown redevelopment and your contract with RDICO. One extremely concerning factor is that the city is being told that due to economic factors, there's issues and underlying problems in being able to proceed with this development. However, the city of Redlands is moving on with an almost identical conversion project with mixed-use housing and a transportation zone, redeveloping their downtown. Across the street, the county of San Bernardino is moving forward with a complete redevelopment of their campus center. And somehow, the residents of San Bernardino and the city are expected to believe that this economic factor of inflation became an unknown quantity 30 days prior to a multi-billion-dollar company with 13 projects around the United States not knowing forecasting. It's just really hard to swallow. And what I know about this city is that when something doesn't seem true, it's more than likely not. And whatever those additional circumstances were noted by the Lincoln Group, that's really at the cause of and the heart of this problem. So do not expect the city to believe that we can't have what every other city has been allowed to do in the midst of recession, in the midst of inflation, in the midst of an economic downturn. Be honest and fix whatever problems you can fix, but as we all know, the truth comes out, and it will either come out and you will answer for it, or you can just tell us the truth before we have to out you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No. Good evening. Welcome. And oh, well, there we go. Now we have a quorum. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you for your patience as well. We do appreciate you sticking around. We do apologize for going a little bit longer, but thank you nonetheless. I call to order this joint regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council, and the Mayor and City Council acting as the successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency of the City of San Bernardino. For the invocation, we have Reverend Stephen D. Shepherd, Senior from the St. Paul AME Church, will be leading us in the invocation. And then Councilmember Sanchez, please, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance following. If we may all stand, please.
I'm going to default to Pastor Sharon. Pastor Shepherd. No, Pastor Sharon. Pastor Sharon, thank you for saving me tonight. I appreciate you.
Beloved, let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, it's at this hour that we come first and foremost to say thank you. We thank you, Lord God, for this gathering. We thank you, Lord God, for your direction. We thank you for every family represented here on tonight. We thank you, Lord God, because we know that everything, it's in your hands. And we pray and we ask you for guidance for those who oversee our city, and then for those of us who are residents. We thank you, dear Lord, for a peaceful assembly on tonight, and we give you full control. We bless you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
If we can all face the flag, put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. City Clerk, recognize you to please take the call for the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra is absent. Mayor Pro Tem.
Here.
Councilmember Charette. Here. Councilmember Reynoso.
Here.
Councilmember Calvin.
Present.
Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
And Mayor Valdivia is absent.
Thank you. Ms. City Attorney, is there anything to report from closed session?
We do not have any reportable action this evening.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, please recognize you for the report, please.
Thank you. So, starting off with a few goings-on about town. Pretty exciting stuff, especially this week. First of all, we're going to introduce some staff. We have hired a few new people. First and foremost, I want to welcome Susie Soren, who is our new, please stand, our new HR director. Welcome. She was with the County of San Bernardino before she came here, so we want to thank her for agreeing to join our team. Also, Ashley Esquivel and Trina Perez. Trina's not here tonight, but Ashley is. And she is working with Cassandra Searcy. She is our homeless services coordinator. We're continuing to build our team, fill out our team in terms of addressing the ongoing crisis of homelessness, and she is going to be a critical component of that team. So welcome, Ashley. And then Trina is their management analyst. We have to keep the back of the house going as well, so that is going to be Trina's role, and we're very excited to have her with us as well. Ashley came to us through from the city of Upland, and Trina came to us from the County of San Bernardino. So we continue to have success in hiring people from other jurisdictions, seasoned, experienced people who really be able to help us out a lot. So welcome to all of them. Next up, Veterans Day. We had a very nice Veterans Day event last Friday at Court Street Square. We honored 3 veterans in particular, Corporal Donald Green of the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major Charles Jolicoeur of the U.S. Army, and Specialist Stephen Bielak, also of the United States Army. We also have continued to install banners honoring our veterans throughout the downtown area, courtesy of Public Works and our Parks Department. Next slide, please. Speaking of parks, Blair Park Fitness Court, we had a ribbon cutting. This was, yes, thank you. It was, several council members were in attendance for this ribbon cutting. It was a nicely, really well-attended event considering how cold it was. Great facility. It's got locally themed art that was designed and installed by Darren Villegas. So really a great thing. And we want to thank San Manuel for their participation in funding that new installation at Blair Park. Next up, this is pretty exciting. This White House Summit is tomorrow, and we had been led to believe that there was not going to be a cabinet secretary in attendance. Well, turns out that wasn't really true. They just weren't telling us. So today it was announced that the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, will be the keynote speaker tomorrow at noon up at Cal State San Bernardino. A really phenomenal event, great thing to have somebody bring to San Bernardino. Really exciting stuff. Street improvements on Sierra Way. Those of you who drive Sierra, you're seeing a lot of concrete work go in. We're fixing broken sidewalks and curbs and gutters, doing some ADA improvements and some other things first. Then you'll see a significant upgrade as we repave the entire stretch between 3rd Street and 30th Street. It's almost 3 miles of Sierra. So it's part of our ongoing efforts to fix up the streets that are in the most dire need of upgrades and repair. Oxford Street, there were quite a few problems that were making it a little bit difficult to traverse. It's cleaned up. We're the urban forestry team, cleared an area that had a lot of brush, a lot of overgrown plants and trees. So we cleared up, and it's safer now for motorists and for bicyclists. We're going to be recognizing San Bernardino's first female African-American officer on November 22nd. At the unveiling, we're going to be unveiling a tribute to our first female officer, which is Black officer, Sherry Adams, who is retired, but want to make sure that she is appropriately honored. Also, we're doing free Thanksgiving dinners at the senior centers. All people have to do is register online, seniors@sbcity.org, or they can visit one of the senior centers and get signed up for a Thanksgiving dinner. Finally, the tree lighting ceremony, which is part of our celebration of the holidays, is coming up on December 1st. There's going to be quite a bit of stuff going on at Court Street Square and also around the rest of the city as well. So please plan on joining us, though, on the 1st at Court Street Square for the tree lighting. We did that last year for the first time in a number of years, and it was well attended then, and this should be much better attended. We have quite a list of events coming up at Court Street Square, courtesy of the Parks Department. So Lydia and her team, and also Public Works, have been doing a lot of work to get that ready. So looking forward to that. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Field. We'll move on to council members for updates in their wards. I'll start to my left, Councilmember Alexander from the 7th Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And good evening, San Bernardino. Is everybody? Hi guys. Good. It's been a busy couple of weeks that we've been out there. On November 4th, I went to the Lois Carson building dedication at Valley College. It was a great event. It was well dedicated to a lady that, if you know Lois Carson in the city, she was a mover and a shaker. On Veterans Day, most of the council members were there. On Veterans Day, we had a Veterans Day program. It was a nice event. I also went to all our seniors at the villas in the city of San Bernardino. It's a care facility where the majority of the citizens there are retired military. I remember one year there was a female general. She was excess of 101 years old that I met there. It is a really great facility in the city of San Bernardino. It's in the 7th Ward. I went to several other veterans programs throughout the region. I went to Blair Park. Councilmember Reynoso and I were at Blair Park, so I'm sure he's going to talk about it, so I'll let him do it. I went to a banquet. Lutheran Services had their Hope of Color banquet. And one thing that you get to do as a council member is you get to share and recognize people for what they do in their services, and that's really important, because a lot of people do good work, and they should be recognized for that work. So that's one of the responsibilities that I have, and I take it very seriously. And it was nice that, and Lutheran Services was in Orange County. We went down there, my wife and I, and we gave out a few certificates of recognition. And then I attended the Muscoviabe Neighborhood Association and the NINA Neighborhood Association. And that's all I got, but I got one more, Mayor Pro Tem. Today is November 16th. It's my wife's birthday. Aww. And with that being said, that's all, Mayor Pro Tem. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And happy birthday. Councilmember Calvin.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Alexander. She is his best part. She keeps this guy together. We appreciate her. but I do welcome all of you here tonight. Remember that this is your house, and we work for you, and we are here to listen to whatever it is that you need us to listen to. So we welcome that. I also attended Blair Park, and I just was telling Councilmember Reynoso that is a beautiful, beautiful addition to the park. And I just want to always have to give a shout out to Ms. Gutfield for all that she does, because she always goes over the top in making something wonderful. So she had, this is your whole, let me say that, right. Okay, so she did have Cal State's kinesiology program out there. I thought that was like super dope, because we got to see a lot of elders and children and everybody just working out on the equipment. So I know that it's gonna be well used by the community. So thank you for all that you do and all these great ideas that you bring to us since you got here. I did attend with Councilmember Alexander as well, the ICUC Gala, and that was super cool the other night. Thank you guys for putting on such a great event, and thank you for your 30 years of service to the community and providing youth empowerment and civic lessons to them all. We appreciate that. The Veterans Day event was well attended, and we were so happy to be able to honor all of our veterans, and so thankful for their service in the United States Armed Services. So we really do appreciate that. That's about it for me tonight. So I'm not going to hold us. I'm going to go ahead on and pass the baton to Councilmember Reynoso.
Thank you. Thanks. I wanted to acknowledge that first, ICUC Gala. Although I didn't attend, I am a direct product, definitely, of youth organizing and ICUC specifically in the city of San Bernardino. I have to give the nod. That's where I come from. If you wonder how I got here, how it started, ICUC. The elections are over. Hallelujah. Now you don't have to see all these spam mailers every day. You don't have to hear people publicly flog each other. You don't have to hear people spin lies. Now you get to keep people accountable. It's the fun part. Now someone gets to sit next to me who's different. They have to sit next to me. And we're going to have a good time. Yeah, but I gotta hear all the mumbles and stuff. I'll preface this next statement by saying I've seen worse, but San Bernardino's voter turnout in this last election, at the end, it's going to be 25%. That's 25,000 of 101,000 people voted. 25 of 101,000, a quarter. That's where we're at. So we've got a lot of work to do. We're as responsible as anybody else. But when people start complaining, I'm going to keep echoing that number. One of the greatest opportunities I've had as a council member is to speak to the youth. I got to attend Cesar Chavez's career day. Yeah, you forgot. You were there, too. I saw your pictures. I didn't take a picture. I'm not the big photo op guy. But I love talking to the youth, and basically I just centered it all around what I always talk to young people about, and people even my age if they'll listen. Trust yourself. Learn yourself well enough to begin to trust yourself in a way that no one can shake your personality, no one can shape you, and no one can tell you your story or who you are or who you're meant to be. I think a lot of young people needed to hear that. I was actually in a class that I found out later was the English language learners, essentially. I felt like that was a population that definitely needed to hear that, and the teacher was emphasizing that after, but I didn't realize it because I would have spoken to any crowd of youth the same way. But I want to thank, I forget, I'll just thank Cesar Chavez middle school staff for inviting me. Blair Park Fitness Court, as was mentioned, the grand opening was very wonderful. I want to thank our director, Lydia Gutfield, but especially the Parks and Rec staff, holding it down always. That was a super cool event. Lydia, you're super professional with the scripts. Sorry that I don't read scripts. I never will, but I appreciate you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but thank you. And Blair Park is, a lot of people in this city, they're going to tell the story of a park that they grew up near. Blair Park is my park, always. I spent a lot of time there. I even spent some time that I should have been in school, I'll be honest, at Blair Park. Because I love Blair Park, and that's all we had. It was right there. We got a skate park, and now we have a fitness court. Now people can actually see people working out, be inspired, not just in public education with the one-off campaigns. Heavy wind damage on the north end, no secret. I live up there. I have lived in the north end my whole life, or as long as I've lived in San Bernardino. So it's pretty crazy. A lot of you probably have seen pictures, know that city staff is on it. We can't stop acts of God from happening, but we can fix sidewalks because some of those sidewalks came out, and that's the real story in San Bernardino, how we laid those sidewalks down over tree roots in the first place. It's got a lot of work to do there. And then 2 items on this agenda that are coming up, the Tenant Bill of Rights that are long overdue, and a lot of people are here to speak on that, and I encourage anyone here to speak on that during public comment, that we've been trying to bring forward a Tenant Bill of Rights that is language inclusive and that honestly centers and begins around RV and mobile home parks, because that is the most vulnerable tenant population. And so we're trying to frame it around that. So you'll see a presentation here about legislation that's been passed in California in 2020, but then you're going to hear from council members of further direction that we would like to see instilled and implemented here in the city of San Bernardino. Because in a city of renters, why not have a Bill of Rights stated when we have all these homeless situations or borderline homeless situations and inflation and people can't afford it? We could have had something already in place for people to point at and for our city staff to honestly go and enforce with. And then the last thing on future items for future agendas is the homeless state of emergency. So if you have anything to say about that, it's on the end of the agenda. We're trying to give Ms. Cassandra Cersei the money that she needs to do the incredible job that she's doing and to just catapult it into the future. We're way behind on that, and that's the end of my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Charette from the 4th Ward.
Thank you. I have just one announcement, and that is that Dr. Nag Neighborhood Cleanup Group, their regular cleanup group, is on November 26th. This doesn't sound right. 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's usually in the morning on a Saturday, so I guarantee that that's not correct. 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. But the Dr. Nag Del Rosa Neighborhood Action Group gets together regularly and does cleanup in their general area. But to get the proper time on Saturday, November 26th, you can call Dan Doreen for details at 909-883-4039. And that's the only announcement I have. I do want to recognize all the veterans. We did have a great Veterans Day ceremony. And I want to give a belated Happy Veterans Day to all those that have served. I appreciate your service very much. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't wish personally Felicia happy birthday. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez from the 1st Ward.
Felicia, happy birthday. That's it.
All right, moving on. Next, we have presentation by Southern California Edison on programs and services offered to support fleet electrification.
You know, I thought you'd think I would have known that by now. All right, Honorable Mayor, Pro Tem, members of the City Council, thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight. My name is Mark Cloud. I'm a Government Affairs Manager for Southern California Edison. Before we begin, I'd like to also say happy birthday to Mrs. Alexander. And Councilman Alexander, that move that you pulled as a married man, I'm going to try and do that too. That was fantastic. No, special thanks though to Councilman Alexander. You brought us here tonight because you wanted us to share what we are doing with the city to bring more EV chargers to the city. And so we're going to get into that in just a second. But before we do, and I've got some folks in the line who are going to give the details there. But a couple of things. One, there was a windstorm today. What a great day for Edison to show up when our poles are being blown over, right? I hope you didn't have your power up, but I know some of you did. And we are working very, very quickly to bring power up as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. There were a couple of poles that were leaning on Kindle, and we are repairing those as we speak and hope to have those completely repaired by tomorrow morning. So if you have more questions or concerns about the outages, go to SCE.com and look at our outage map, plug your address in, and you'll get the latest there. Also wanted to give you an update on the Warm Creek Bridge project, working very closely with your Public Works Department. Alex Kishta, fantastic guy to work with. He is working with our team to complete work on the Warm Creek Bridge project. One more update, the streetlight issue. Damon Alexander, you know that we were looking into that for you. We're working closely with Alex Kishta on that, and we will hopefully have that thing buttoned up very soon, but we're still working out some of the remaining details. Finally, now getting into the Charge Ready project. It's a big project that SCE offers to our customers that will basically cover the costs for a lot of the infrastructure costs of building out EV infrastructure. And so to bring us more detail on that, I have my colleague on the line, Shant, who is ready and willing to give you all the details on that project. And it's very cool because San Bernardino is actually very far along in the application process and is already participating in Charge Ready. So with that, Shant, if you can hear me, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that great introduction. Good evening, everybody. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you before you today. As Mark said, my name is Shantna Petin. I'm a senior policy advisor at Southern California Edison, and Mark provided a great introduction, but let me just kind of double down and start by saying at Southern California Edison, we're leading the transformation of the electric power industry. And we're focusing on clean energy, efficient electrification, the grid of the future, and customer choice. We're well on our pathway to delivering 100% clean power to our customers. And now we're working to plug more cars, trucks, buses, and equipment into that clean power supply. And as you all know, I don't have to tell you, but that transportation accounts for almost half of the greenhouse gas emissions in California. And that problem is especially acute in communities along heavily used transportation corridors like those in the Inland Empire communities. So we're working to support mass market adoption of zero emission vehicles like electric vehicles through a multifaceted approach. And in my brief remarks today, I'll touch on a couple programs and offerings, some of which you're taking advantage of already, but some that you may want to consider. Next slide, please. Now, our new Charge Ready program launched last year with the goal of supporting the installation of over 30,000 electric vehicle charging ports across our service area over 5 years. We expect the overwhelming majority of those charging ports to be level 2 chargers that can provide an electric vehicle anywhere between 10 to 20 miles of range per hour of charging. And the new Charge Ready program will have an extraordinary focus on equity by locating half of those over 30,000 charging ports in communities that are most heavily impacted by the combined effects of economic, environmental, public health burdens. And these are otherwise known as state designated disadvantaged communities. Charge Ready will also help expand the promise of electric vehicles to more people by supporting charging station installations at multifamily dwellings like apartments and condo complexes, because we know well not everybody lives in a home and has the ability to charge their cars in a garage. Next slide, please. Now, this should be, and I can't see the slide, but I hope it's the case, but it should be the slide with the couple graphics of the transformer. And I wanted to really kind of focus on this because it really helps convey the value proposition of our Charge Ready programs. At a high level, through Charge Ready, SE installs and maintains the supporting EV charging infrastructure. That's the make ready infrastructure. And then we provide rebates to reduce the charging station costs, while the program participants, our customers, typically own, operate, and maintain the charging stations themselves. And as I said, this slide is really the value proposition. Normally, we're just responsible for the utility side of the infrastructure, but through our Charge Ready program, we can take care of almost everything you see depicted here. And that applies to the infrastructure upgrades like the higher voltage electric panels, conduit, the wiring, all to facilitate installation of EV chargers. And then we also provide technical assistance for siting the charging equipment, access to our experts, and other resources to help our customers move each project forward. Next slide, please. Now, I'm really happy to say that the city of San Bernardino is already wisely taking advantage of our Charge Ready program for passenger vehicles, and really the genesis of this started, last year with conversations we had with your city manager and follow-up conversations we've had with Councilman Alexander. So I'm happy to report that the city has 3 active Charge Ready projects with 10 level 2 charging stations per project for a total of 30 charging ports at the city locations depicted on the slide. And again, through the program, Southern California Edison will build the utility side and the customer side of the meter supporting infrastructure at no cost to the city. And then we'll provide a rebate to offset the costs associated with actually purchasing and installing the charging stations themselves. And the cost that the city would benefit from in this case is in the order of hundreds of thousands. Now, I will stop and say, while the city is very far along on your application process, I think we're at the final step where we need just program acceptance. And I believe that's that's in the process, but I would be remiss if I didn't encourage the city to finally execute that agreement so we can lock everything in and begin to bring this project to fruition. And the real, speaking about benefits, the program will provide a tremendous benefit to the city in that it'll provide electric vehicle charging stations for your own municipal use, but also expand the availability of public charging stations for residents, visitors, and city employees. Next slide, please. Now, while the focus on light duty passenger vehicles is important, medium and heavy duty vehicles are the largest mobile sources of air pollution. So transitioning these types of vehicles to zero emission electric vehicles will lead to greater gains in air pollution reduction. And our Charge Ready Transport program was designed with that very thought in mind. As we all know, goods and people movement play an important role in our economy. So kind of continuing with the same model, the Make Ready model I mentioned earlier, the Charge Ready Transport program gives customers the opportunity to install infrastructure to support a fleet of medium and heavy duty electric vehicles at low or no cost. That could be, for instance, transit buses. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to note two other offerings that are related. We also provide transportation electrification advisory services to support customers early in their electrification planning phase. The city is eligible for our EV readiness study, which looks at holistically your organization and provides EV information, fueling cost comparisons, financial incentives, EV charging infrastructure recommendations, and other guidance regarding site considerations. And then the second offering I wanted to note, and this is something we'd have to have further discussions with the city to see if you're eligible, but the city could also be eligible for the Grant Assistance Program, which helps qualified medium and heavy duty fleet operators apply for state and local grants that would reduce the cost of purchasing electric vehicles. And as you can imagine, these grant programs are often complex and highly competitive. So our grant assistance program really helps those eligible customers apply for the funding and helps see your application is complete and competitive at no charge to the customer. And then finally, yes. Next slide, please. And finally, I just wanted to mention our new construction rebate option for multifamily new construction properties. Cal Green building codes, as you all may know, mandate a certain percentage of parking spots in multifamily new construction properties to be EV capable only, but we're trying to incentivize developers to go beyond building code. So we'll offer up to a $3,500 per rebate per charging port to newly constructed multifamily properties to ensure that the new EV building, the new building actually has operational EV charging upon completion. And really, with this offering, I wanted to highlight in that some of our other Charge Ready light duty programs are oversubscribed, but this offering is not. So if the city or your planning commission would be willing to help us promote this offering to developers or developments in your community, share contact information for parties leading developments in your community, our team would be happy to reach out to them, share info about the program, and walk them through the process and encourage them to take advantage of this worthwhile program, and again, help expand EV charging in your community. And I will just conclude by saying, we're very pleased, as I said, that San Bernardino is already taking advantage of these of our program for the light duty vehicles, and we're here to partner with you if you're interested in our Charge Ready Transport program for medium and heavy duty vehicles. If you'd like more information about the program or interested in applying, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You're very talented SC account manager who's on the line with me, Amy Olson, and your incredibly capable government relations manager, Mark Cloud. And with that, I want to stop and thank you for very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any brief comments or questions from the council?
One question. Why level 2? Why not level 1? Why can't we get level 1?
So I will say the Charge Ready light duty passenger vehicle program does support level 1 and level 2 charging. We've found that most of our customers opt for level 2. So level 1 charging is part of that light duty offering. From my understanding, the city is looking at level 2 chargers for their existing projects. And then the Charge Ready light duty program, again, and by light duty, I refer to passenger vehicles, did have a small portion for DC fast charging. But that portion of the program has not yet been approved by our regulators. Again, it's a very small, I think about 200 DCFC charging ports. Once we do get more guidance on that, and once it is available, happy to share that information with the city. But at the moment, our current light duty program is mostly focused on level 1 and level 2. I just focused on level 2.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. Mark, I appreciate you coming out and arranging that so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No other questions? Mark, thank you. Thank you. A big thank you to Southern California Edison for coming out and providing that presentation to us. I know you were very busy today. so thank you for your partnership as well. Oh, yeah, Councilmember Calvin.
Yes, so you stated that new development in our communities, we're able just to pass that on, that information to the developer, and then they can contact you all and get that set up?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. We've been eagerly pursuing multifamily property developments and developers ourselves, but we welcome any assistance to help promote that. And all they need to do is get in contact with us, and we're happy to work with them and see if they would be eligible and help them reap that worthwhile offering. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to a presentation for Citizen of the Month from the 4th Ward, Councilmember Charette. We have Junior Carrillo.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure this evening to recognize a Citizen of the Month. This fellow, the certificate says Gonzalo B. Carrillo, and I don't think anyone will know who I'm talking about.
I didn't even know that was his name.
When I, well,
just called him
I
Junior all the
didn't
time.
ask him if it was okay to use the official name, and our staff used the official name, but I think if I said Junior Carrillo, everyone would know who he is. Junior has taken a real interest in the city, certainly as he and I have become kind of close in about the last 2 or 3 years, been very supportive of me and what I do in the 4th Ward, and he makes a real effort to get to many of the community meetings and makes phone calls to people to get them to coffee with a cop. He's out at community meetings, the neighborhood association meetings. I believe you're even interested in getting one started up for your general neighborhood. So, and I'll let you talk about that. But it really is my pleasure and honor to recognize you as a Citizen of the Month, and it's in recognition of dedicated service to the affairs of the community and for civic pride demonstrated by numerous deeds, and you do numerous deeds, I know, for the benefit of the citizens of San Bernardino. So here's a pen. You've already got one. You're going to have one on the other collar as well somehow. And here's your certificate, and I'm pleased to recognize you and thank you for your service, and you're welcome to say a word or two.
I thank you for this, and anybody that knows me, I'm a positive guy. I mean, if you're negative, I don't have time for you. And, you know, we have a city, if we roll back 10 years, we were in bankruptcy. We had no money. A lot of good people left. Now we have money. We've hired a new chief, police chief, a new fire chief. I heard some people get hired today for different places. We've had we got to look at the positive side. I mean, I was driving around today, and I saw a couple of signs from different candidates. And you know what? I could have went and got on social media and said, you know, so-and-so didn't pick up the sign. what I did is I opened up my trunk, I threw it in there, I went home, threw it in the trunk. You know, we got to get positive. We got to move forward and be positive. You know, the crying has got to be done. I mean, if this city is going to go forward, it's got to be positive. You know, we nominated the mayor, whether you like it or not, 65-35. 35% of the people aren't going to like it. But you know what? If we're going to be a team, we got to get these 35% people that didn't vote for the prayer on board, because that's what we got for the next 4 years. You know, we've got good people. And I was privileged enough to be on the redistricting as a commissioner. And you know what? I made some mistakes. I was new. And you know, some people criticized me for the mistakes I made. And you know what? I represent this city. And you know what? I take full responsibility for the mistakes I made. But you know what? It's not going to discourage me from getting on another commission. And I look forward to it. The last thing I'm going to close with, getting to know Fred and how much our councilmen and women do for this city. It's a thankless job. When I stop and see these people come in here and public speak and criticize our chief, our police chief, our fire chief, shame on you and our council. You know what? Any one of you want to get up there and let me criticize you. There's nobody here without fault, including me. And, you know, we've got to be positive. We got to thank these council people. You know, they have a tough job. Just their ward alone is 30,000 people, just their ward. They're up here making decisions on the whole city, not just their ward. And the little bit I did, I take this, but you know what? It deserves every one of our council, to our chief, to our fire chief. They deserve this because they do this every day. And I'll close with that. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Junior. I'm glad the election is over and that he didn't run against me. If you want a picture.
Okay. Up here.
Okay, now we will be moving on to public comments. Let's see, we do have both podiums available. At this time, public comments will be heard. In-person speakers will be heard first, followed by remote public speakers. We have, first up, we have Treasurer Ortiz, followed by Mrs. Alexander. You'll be followed by her. And then Jessica Andelon.
Good evening, Council. So I'm really happy to see the Tenants' Bill of Rights on the agenda tonight. I think it's so vitally important to make sure that people who have housing are allowed to stay in housing, especially those in the most vulnerable type of housing. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this city is also creating homelessness on its own. In the first ward, Teddy Sanchez's ward, since 2015, the city has been extremely aware of what has been happening at 340 4th Street. And 140 families are now being pushed out. The mayor was receiving political contributions, and code enforcement was completely aware of the problems, and yet here we are with no resolution. This is the problem with the city. You cannot complain or say that you want to fix something when you are also causing another side of the problem to exist. What is the point of a rent cap if people aren't even having a place to live? We need more housing. We need to put people first instead of the policies and the politics. And that also goes into conjunction with how you're bringing money into the city. Right now on the consent calendar, you're going to re-up a contract with our state legislator. What if they brought into this city $2.5 million for the California Theater? What about $2.5 million for housing, for homelessness, for education, for VIP programs, for everything that the city is consistently asking for? Day by day and dollar by dollar, the city falls short. You've all been reelected and you all vote together. Now is the time. And I so appreciate Councilman Reynoso for finally stepping forward as one of your council members and making homelessness a state of emergency, because this is what you've been talking about for 4 years straight. And the time is at hand. We will not accept that we don't have the staff or the money anymore, because we have some of the most top-paid administrators in the Inland Empire. You have the highest tax revenue and the lowest services. You continually raise our trash bills 2% every single year, and we have the worst street conditions and no one to come by and clean us every 2 weeks where our cars are parked. There is so much more to offer, and the time is at hand. But we can't do it without you. No more corruption, no more passing side by side. It is 2022, and we need 2022 results, not 2012 excuses during a bankruptcy. Thank you.
Next, we have Felicia Alexander, followed by Jessica Andalon, followed by Zeddy Epps. Mrs. Alexander.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Good evening, council. Good evening, staff. I'd like to first say thank you to my husband for the beautiful flowers on my birthday and getting me out here. We have one more week, everybody, until the San Bernardino Turkey Trot. So I wanted to get out here and extend another invitation to the community. It's on November 24th at the San Bernardino International Airport. We have a 5K and a 10K fun, run, and walk. It's flat. But yet challenging for those that need that challenge. So just want to encourage you all to get out there. We have quite a bit going on that day that will be engaging for the community, and just want to get the families out there and just come out and support and have a good time on Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Jessica Andalon, followed by Zeddy Epps, followed by Tyler Durden.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Joe Baca's office, and we would just like to invite all of you guys to our open house, which will be held on December 6th at 4:30 at the Government Center building. We do have some flyers in the back, so we hope that you guys can join us, and that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zeddy Epps, followed by Tyler Durden, followed by Russell DeGuan. Zeddy Epps.
Good evening, Council. I'm here because I live in the 6th Ward, and I've been calling and complaining about our street conditions for almost 5 years, and nothing's being done. My mother lived off of New Pine and Palm, and her streets, I would say about 4 years ago, her streets weren't even anything wrong with them, and all in that little community right there, all the streets got repaved. And that just put a big question mark. I'm like, why is that? It's like a big value gap, like the 6th Ward isn't being valued. And I just don't understand that. And also, I want to talk about the containers. There are people who own these properties are being allowed to have containers placed in our residential neighborhoods. You know, there's containers on Ramona and Baseline, but they've been removed except one. There's containers on Reese Street in Mount Vernon. I don't know why they're being allowed to be in our residential area. And then there's containers on Mount Vernon between 9th Street and 10th Street. And I don't know why that's allowed. And that's what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you. Next, we have Tyler Durden, followed by Russell DeGuan, followed by Kristen Malby. Tyler.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm back. I'm going to take a different approach today. This morning, I left my house. Last thing my wife said to me was, just let this go. Just let it go. And you know what I told her? Fuck that. All right? Now, a lot can happen in 24 hours. We saw what happened to those recruits today, didn't we? Copy that? You guys saw? Now, when this happened, to my wife. She was in the middle of getting her doctorate. She was sexually assaulted by Captain Jay Hausman of the San Bernardino Fire Protection District. And you know it, because you know this isn't even his first rodeo, now is it? See, they plead the fifth because they can't plead the first. So moving on, this happened, and you know why she did that? Because she's a nurse, and she works at UCI Medical Center in the ICU. So when your recruits show up, they have the best goddamn nurse working for them and treating them, I will speak how I want. Don't tell me how to talk. You're not my boss. You're not helping me, are you? You're not helping me. You're gonna arrest me now for freedom of speech? I fucking dare you.
Stop the profanity, sir.
Okay, back off the thugs. Call off your dogs. Tell me what to do.
Look, we're only doing this. We're asking you to do this out of a courtesy to all the people who are
I'm
here.
asking for a courtesy. Give me my day in court.
These people
I'm
didn't do
asking for a
anything to
courtesy.
you, okay? So we're just asking for
a
that.
courtesy. I'm reporting a crime, and you do nothing about it
These people did
except
nothing to you, all right?
gaslight me. You called us liars, right? Because she's just a filthy hoe, right? And this is a firefighter. Who's going to believe you? That's what you're saying. We call us liars. And then what do? You blamed me. You blamed me. You know why he's asking these questions, Mr. Apodaca? Maybe because of what you did. So now it's my fault, or is it her fucking fault for marrying me?
Sir, I'm gonna cut you off at this point because you've
Do you
been
guys wanna
warned with the
cut me off, or do
profanity,
you
so we're
guys
gonna
wanna
cut
cut
you
me
off
off?
at this point. We're gonna move on to the next speaker. We're not gonna accept the profanity, so we're gonna move on to the next speaker.
So anyway, she works
Next,
at
we
UCI
have
Medical
Russell
Center,
DeGuan, sir.
and I hope these recruits get her, because she's the best nurse out there. You're fucking welcome.
Next, we have Russell DeGuan, followed by Kristen Malaby, followed by Dolores Armstead.
All right, that's gonna be a doozy there. Anyways, I'm a half glass full. I like Mr. Junior. I'm about positivity. I'm here just to give a report. Thank you for allowing me the time. Russell Degnan with Operation New Hope, your San Bernardino City Youth Opportunity Center, downtown in First Ward. We are contracted with the City of San Bernardino for the Violence Intervention Prevention Program and the Youth Reinvestment Program. So I just want to give a couple updates as the year is winding down. Our Youth Reinvestment Program is a diversion program for youth ages 14 to 24. We currently have 36 students that come into our youth center every Saturday to grow, learn, and become leaders in our community. Since 2019, you've had 371 youth complete our program, which I think is quite positive. Our Project Safe Neighborhood is a high-risk gun violence program. We currently have 12 youth in that. Since 2020, 155 have completed that program. Currently, the VIP program that I appreciate all you guys approving through the ARPA funds started in July. That's a high violence program. We have 28 youth that are currently enrolled in that program. We are funded through the San Bernardino County's Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We have 75 slots available for youth. So if you know someone 18 to 24 that is looking to move their life in a career direction, please send them to Operation New Hope. We're also funded for our prison to employment. 86 adults are enrolled in that program. 76 of those 86 adults are placed into full-time employment, 0% recidivism rate, and since 2019, 148 have completed that program. I came today with a special guest. She's observing today. She was one of our superstar students, is now a full-time employee, paid $20 an hour, gets benefits. So Operation New Hope is here investing in all the right ways. She'll be attending once a month to report out. She's the president of the county's Youth Advisory Board. Kim, we're ecstatic to hear the Youth Council is going to be approved here. We're also fostering a youth council at Operation New Hope's Youth Opportunity Center. So I appreciate you all. Sorry that I had to follow behind a gentleman that obviously has some concerns, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Kristen, my apologies, is it Malapi? Followed by Dolores Armstead, followed by Jocelyn Fiazel. Kristen.
Sorry, it's a little difficult. Good evening, community. My name is Kristen. I run a community organization here in the Inland Empire called SoCal Trash Army. Today I come to you to speak on a little bit of a more personal note. Before SoCal Trash Army, 5 years ago, I was a hardworking citizen. I was a business owner. I was a thriving artist and a full-time employee at Costco for 6 years as a baker. I never envisioned that one day I would go from making $3,000 in a weekend to waking up and not getting my hand to my mouth, suffering from 14 injuries due to my repetitive motion position at my job. Overnight, my life literally changed. I lost everything. 2 weeks later, I found out I was expecting my first baby at 37. I literally had to find my way up around a whole new world. And that's why I dedicated myself to serving a community that I know is in need. I literally work for free. I spend every day finding ways how I can help my mother of 7 who lives in her van, my 4-generation family who lives on the streets. I'm asking council today to understand that homelessness comes in all different colors, shapes, sizes, representations. You would never know that I do what I do, and sometimes I choose buying a package of gloves with my last $20. I'm asking council to be innovators in the Inland Empire, giving opportunity to the people here who are asking, literally begging for it. We need new policies regarding code and housing. It shouldn't matter that I might live in a pallet home or I might live in a dome home made of clay and sandbags, but at least my daughter has a castle. She's 4. Please make this possible before she's too old to enjoy learning how to garden in her yard or learning how to work on a car in her driveway. All things that children cannot learn and get living in apartments or on the streets. We need help here, and we are asking with you guys that are in place who know the community, who want to do better, who want to see better, please do that.
Thank you. Next, we have Dolores Armstead, followed by Jocelyn, followed by Christian Flores. Ms. Armstead.
How do I follow that? Well, I'm again advocating for staffing assistance for our council members. Our council is responsible for over 3,000 people each. They are responsible for answering calls, dealing with issues, writing policy, attending events, all with no assistance. Several council members actually have jobs or businesses to attend to. So, city manager, I'm sure there is space in your budget so that each council member can have a dedicated staff. If they have help, they can help us. Right now, they're overwhelmed, they're swamped. So give them assistance so they can better help the residents of the city. Then I've got a question about the food vendors. We need a location where they can legally provide their services. Maybe if we had a designated space with designated times, we can prevent the infestation of illegal food vendors. Not the legal ones, the illegal ones, those without a license, those without certifications, those that take over the sidewalks and decide to open wherever they please. Those are illegal. I'm for legal businesses. So I'm asking, can we do something about the illegal businesses? Our sidewalks are for people, not for illegal restaurants opening it and taking over. And many of the vendors are not from San Bernardino. I'll support San Bernardino, but many of them aren't even from here. They're just taking over here. So we need to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jocelyn.
Yes.
Faisal? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it. Faisal. Okay, my apologies.
Yes. Hi, I'm here today from the Georgia Apartments, Renters United in Solidarity. Our apartments was in foreclosure, and we have these slumlords that we, by the way of Mayor Valdeva, Bridge Management, Golden Opportunity, Palma, Hightower, and they have taken our city over. Right now they bought our apartments. It was code problems from the beginning. Some kind of way, there was no notice of, no notices. They didn't get any notices of the code enforcement infractions that was there on the property. They was not made aware of it. We're living right now in not good conditions. So now they decide that they want to evict us. Code enforcement came out to my apartment, had no hot water. No hot water for months. I've been living in San Bernardino for 66 years. My father came here in 1942. I have never lived without hot water, heat. These people didn't care. Code enforcement didn't care. Finally, the code enforcement did come. They brought them with them, telling me that, oh, the state to release them from HUD has nothing to do with it. So today, the code enforcement told them to pull the permits. They come over to the apartment on the other side while she's at work and do her hot water heater with no permit. They fixed other tenants' stuff with no permits, covered up mold and everything else. Now they want to evict us. Inland County Legal Services can't help us. They're evicting us on lies and everything else. And if we don't get an attorney to go to court with us, we're going to be evicted. Why? Why have the city allowed this? You know, why should we be evicted? You know, AB 1482 protects us. We haven't done anything. We're living in unhuman conditions over there. These people are horrible. It's only 36 units. How in the heck did the city let the state free them without anything? We need help. We need the city attorney to help us go to court and stop these evictions.
Thank you. Next, we have Christian Flores, followed by Oscar Rodriguez, followed by Albert de la Vega. Christian Flores.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Flores, organizer with ICUC, Justice B, Something Better for San Bernardino, various community coalitions. Today I'm here to talk about the proposed Tenants Bill of Rights conversation. A Tenant Bill of Rights policy is an important step for us to take moving forward to allow the city to take an active role in holding landlords accountable for operating ethically and justly in accordance with the laws of the state. Laws that are not commonly known yet and can only be held accountable in court. As things currently stand, the city plays a passive role that enables landlords to employ predatory practices to take advantage of tenants. A tenant's Bill of Rights stands to set adaptive standards for how landlords need to do business in the city. This includes anything from language accessibility in their documentation, local rent control, standards on application fees, defining standard wear and tear and what doesn't cost a tenant their whole deposit. This can also include defining existing organizations of interest like tenants unions and homeowners associations, which tenants are still expected to pay membership through, even though they don't own the home that they're renting. Most importantly, this type of policy can include an annual amendment process to allow for it to adapt and evolve to keep up with the needs of our tenants and residents. So this is how we can use it as an opportunity to better the living situation for our neighbors and set a standard or lead by example for our neighboring communities. And I wanted to applaud and celebrate Councilmember Theodore Sanchez and Ben Reynoso for helping us facilitate and begin these conversations over a year ago. I know there's much more we can do, and I also applaud the rest of the City Council for allowing and voting for this research to take place, and for taking steps to declare surplus land act for more parcels in the city to allow for the creation of more affordable housing, because this is more than just the Tenants' Bill of Rights. I mean, this is how we address homelessness and housing citywide. The city's hands are tied as it is now. When we brought up tenants from an apartment complex here, 16 units off of downtown, there's a lady that injured her foot because the floor broke when she lives on the second floor. Somebody else has their living room couch soaked every time it rains. But they'd rather not bring it up to the city because the city can only revoke business licenses, which would then, in turn, evict everyone. And they have no other choice but to live where they are because there is no other housing. There is no other alternative.
Thank you. Next we have Oscar Rodriguez, followed by Albert de la Vega, followed by Selena Herrera. Oscar Rodriguez.
Good evening. My name is Albert de la Vega. Most of you know me as Funnel Cake Fridays. I've been a street vendor for more than 4 years. I live in San Bernardino. I'm here to ask for the city for a moratorium for up to 6 months to stop citing and confiscating street vendors' equipment. The thing is that when you're confiscating street vendors' equipment, you're actually confiscating their lives. As far as, that's how they make ends meet, to put meals on the table, to pay the bills, to pay the rent. Some of these street vendors are already on the brink of being homeless, okay? And so a lot of us that are together, we actually donate money just to help them put food back on the table, So you guys might think that you guys are doing a good thing in confiscating the equipment from street vendors, but that's the only way they make a living. They do events, parties, and you take that away, it really puts a hardship on them financially, And one thing is that when I buy my goods, I go to Restaurant Depot, and I know everybody at Restaurant Depot, and the manager always tells me, because he knows I'm a street vendor, he always asks me, "Where's everybody at?" I go, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Yeah, we used to have a bunch of street vendors here, and our sales were high, and now their sales are low." And I said, "Well, because what the city's doing, they're confiscating, they're scaring the street vendors away, so it's going to be a domino effect." And so if that restaurant sees it, I wonder how many other, stores that these street vendors buy their goods from to sell. So I'm here to ask for a moratorium, maybe up to 6 months, to stop citing and confiscating hardworking street vendors. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Is Oscar Rodriguez not here? Oscar Rodriguez, going once, going twice? No. Selena Herrera, followed by Jerry Owens, followed by Luis Ojeda. Selena.
Quítese los audífonos y no se va a confundir porque la señorita está interpretando. Empiece.
Muy buenas noches, mi nombre es Oscar Rodríguez.
Good night, my name is Oscar Rodriguez.
Soy vendedor ambulante de la ciudad de Moscoy.
I am a vendor at the city of Moscow.
Estoy aquí porque he sido víctima
I am here because I have been a victim
del acoso,
of the harassment,
del odio,
the hate,
de la discriminación
the discrimination
de parte de los trabajadores de la ciudad.
From the city workers.
Y esa manera con la que nos tratan
And the way that they treat us
ha sido un vivo ejemplo
has been a clear example
para la delincuencia.
for crime.
Ahora la delincuencia
Now,
nos asalta,
the criminals assault us,
nos golpea,
they hit us,
nos mata.
they kill us.
No somos criminales,
We are not criminals.
somos pequeñas empresas,
We are small businesses,
potencial económico a la economía local.
possible increase in finance to the local community.
No trabajamos para nosotros,
We don't work for ourselves.
trabajamos para un hogar,
We work for a home,
para una familia,
for a family,
futuros hijos que están estudiando,
future children that are going to school,
futuros maestros,
future teachers,
doctores,
doctors,
policías.
police officers.
Estamos aquí para pedirles su apoyo
We are here to ask for your support,
y que paren ahorita por lo pronto los acosos.
and for now, for the harassment to stop.
Y muchas gracias por su atención.
And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Selena Herrera, followed by Jerry Owens, followed by Luis Ojeda.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Celina Herrera.
Good afternoon, my name is Selena Herrera.
Soy vendedora de cacahuates en San Bernardino.
I sell peanuts in San Bernardino.
Hace 4 meses que no estoy trabajando.
It's been 4 months that I have not been working.
Hoy venimos a pedirles,
Today, we are here to ask,
en nombre de todos los vendedores,
on behalf of all the
un
vendors,
espacio público
a public space
para poder vender,
to be able to sell.
bajo acuerdos,
Under agreements,
mientras está en vigor la moratoria,
during the moratorium
por parte de ustedes,
that it has been placed
para así poder
because
llevar
of
a
you,
cabo
so that we can
un evento temporal
do a temporary event
en uno o más puntos de la ciudad,
at 1 or 2 places within the city,
o tener nuestra propia placita en cada ciudad.
or for us to have our own placita in each city.
Yeah, por ejemplo, como en Placita de Los Ángeles,
For example, there is a placita in Los Angeles.
los vendedores pagan una renta,
The vendors, they pay rent,
llevan sus reglas, regulaciones
they have rules and regulations,
y pagan taxis.
and they pay taxes.
Nosotros, vendedores ambulantes,
We, the street vendors,
ocupamos esa oportunidad.
we want that opportunity.
Tener una placita en Highland,
We want a placita in Highland,
una en San Bernardino,
one in San Bernardino,
una en Fontana,
one in Fontana,
y ustedes no verán más vendedores en la calle.
and then you will not see any street vendors out on the street.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
Le agradecemos mucho su tiempo. Jerry Owens, followed by Luis Ojeda, followed by Felipe Almazon. Mr. Owens.
Jerry Owens here. I'm back over the last 2.5 years or so. I've been after you guys. I've been coming to your meetings, and all of a sudden, I haven't heard nothing. I've been after you guys for 11 years to get Rialto Avenue done from I Street to Pepper Avenue. Nothing's been done. I've been to the mayor 3 times, took my picture and everything. I thought he was going to do something. Nothing but lies. Figueroa is my councilman. I've been to him. I haven't heard nothing. Now you guys are doing this park down off Sierra Avenue. You're doing streets. You done Orange Hill Road down there. I forget the name of the street, but it's by the Orange Hill Fairgrounds there, from D Street all the way down to Waterman Avenue. You guys redone the streets. You guys are doing the streets down on Sierra Avenue now. You're doing other streets in progress. You're doing the park. What's the park costing you? $3-4 million? And you got all these projects going on, and you can't come and do a street? And here it is, wintertime again. And at the corner of Rancho and Rialto, you guys are going to repave that road, and then all of a sudden, what's going to happen? And then you're going to have to tear up the streets, redo the pipeline through there, because right on the corner of Rancho, where the liquor store sits, when it rains, that street floods for whatever reason. And here you guys still sitting on your butts doing nothing. But you got the money coming in, you got the money to fix all these other streets in the parking lot of the old courthouse, which that is probably what, almost 4 or 5 acres right there of pavement. It's been redone, and you can't do our streets. And it's just like the other lady who came up here saying her streets are being done around, but what about where her mother lives or where she lives, the streets? Nothing's being done about our streets. When is it going to be done? You guys sit here and you paid money for having your streets done here in front of the mayor's house and everything, in City Hall. Did that need to be done at the time? No. But you guys did it anyway. You tore it up. Are you going to tear up Rialto Avenue and do it right? Or are you just going to fill in the cracks and pave it over? And that's it. Nothing's been done for 11 years. You've been through a corrupt mayor, maybe 2 mayors, and still nothing. I've been down here last month to City Hall to try to get somebody to do something about it. Did I get a phone call? I'm still waiting for a phone call from 9 years ago saying I'm going to get a phone call from the top person of your streets. I still haven't gotten it. When's it going to get done? You guys getting your money. You're getting paid. Where's the money? Going where? Thank you.
Next, we have Luis Ojeda, followed by Felipe Almazon, followed by Margarita Vega.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I want to invite the public. We're going to have a cleanup this coming Saturday, the 19th, from 9 to 12. It's going to be, we're going to be meeting at Acacia and Baseline. So I want to thank the city, Vertec, Chase Bank, We Are the Change, and some other groups that are participating with us. So also Public Works has been involved, Parks and Rec. So thank you very much, Mr. Ted Sanchez, and Councilmember Ibarra is not here. They're participating with us as well. So everybody's welcome to come. So we expect to have a good turnout. So that's that. So since we're going to try to keep it positive tonight, like everybody else, but I have just one observation to make, and I have brought this up to some council members before. We discussed this with Mr. Figueroa the other day. There's a lot on Orange Show that we were going to clean up because it's been like that for the past, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. And I don't know where code enforcement is at. I mean, it seems that the trash keep growing in that property, and I see the same thing in several lots. But what is kind of amazing to me is that I've seen some members of the community complaining about certain individuals that are buying properties in San Bernardino, those empty lots, cleaning them up, and they park a few trucks in there, and right away they come to complain. Code enforcement goes there, shut them down. And for me, I'm all about doing things right, but we have to have common sense as well. So for me, I don't understand. I have been to cleanup where we have cleaned lots from, trash and homeless that live in there, and nobody complains. Why is it that once, a business is trying to clean it up, try to make things right, they don't work with them? So for me, it makes no sense. And also, maybe some of the public, they don't realize that the zoning where they live changed. It used to be residential, especially in the south side. Now it's light industrial. And it's allowed for warehouses, for trucks, for contractor yards. And, I mean, we have to know where we live. I mean, if it's in a residential area, hey, yeah, they have the right to complain. But if not, we need to work with those people. So also, we need to understand logistics is the time of this city, logistics. So let's think about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ojeda. Next, we have Felipe Almazon, followed by Margarita Vega, followed by Miriam Espinosa. Señor Felipe.
Diga.
Buenas noches, Juan Figueroa.
Good night, Juan Figueroa.
Por el motivo que estamos aquí,
The reason that we're here,
vengo de una familia muy humilde.
I come from a very humble family. I am a hard worker, just like my partners that are here.
Por favor, les pedimos que nos escuchen.
We ask that you hear us, that you give us permits, or what can we do, what plans can we do so that we can get permits. The truth is,
La policía llega donde estamos vendiendo, nos
the police
quitan
comes to the place that we're selling, and they remove us. They remove the things that we're selling. They take everything away from us.
Entonces, que por favor les pedimos que nos
So
den un
we
permiso,
please ask that you give us a permit,
que nos escuchen, por favor.
that you please hear us out.
Pues muchas gracias.
Thank
Por
you so
eso-
much.
por eso venimos. Muchas gracias.
That is all. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, le agradecemos mucho su tiempo. Next, we have Margarita Vega, followed by Miriam Espinosa, followed by Robert Porter.
¿Usted necesita intérprete? Okay. Diga.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Margarita.
Hi, good evening. My name is Margarita.
Estoy aquí porque
I am here because
soy una vendedora ambulante
I am a street vendor,
y a la mera verdad me
and
gustaría que si
honestly,
por favor
I would like
nos,
if you could please,
nos extendieran el tiempo
if you could
para seguir
extend our
vendiendo en
time
la
so that
calle,
we can continue
ya
selling
que,
on the street,
hemos recibido muchas
since
multas.
we have received a lot of
Somos
citations.
personas humildes y
We are
trabajadoras
humble people and we're hardworking,
y nos gustaría que nos dieran la oportunidad.
and we
Yo
would
sé
like
que
for you to
ustedes
give us the
pueden
opportunity.
ayudarnos.
We know that you can help us.
Nosotros, de eso es la manera en que nosotros vivimos.
That is how we make a living.
No creo que ustedes quieran vernos vivir en la calle.
I-
Hay muchos homeless en la calle.
There are already a lot of homeless people out there, and I don't think that you would want us to become them.
Y en la situación que ahorita tengo 2 meses que no estoy trabajando.
I haven't been working for 2 months. That is my current situation.
Soy madre soltera.
I am a single mother.
Me la estoy viendo muy difícil.
I am having a very difficult time.
Vienen días festivos.
The holidays are coming.
Mis hijos me piden cosas.
My children ask me for
Es
things.
difícil para mí
It is difficult for me
darles lo que ellos
to
necesitan.
give them what they need.
Ellos han visto cuando la ciudad llega.
They have seen when the city comes,
Nos quitan todo.
they remove
La
everything,
manera en cómo nos tratan.
the way that they treat us.
Llegan humillándonos.
They humiliate us.
Llegan con actitud muy déspotas.
They come in there very rude.
Se supone que la policía está
And
para
supposedly
ayudarnos.
la policía?
Está
Supposedly the
para ayudarnos.
police is there to help us.
Muchas veces queremos hacerles unas preguntas.
Many times we want to ask them questions.
ignoran o nos
They
gritan.
ignore us or they yell at us.
Creo que todos tenemos derechos.
I believe we all have
Sabemos
rights.
que estamos trabajando ilegal,
We know that we are working illegally,
pero sé que ustedes pueden ayudarnos.
but I know that you
a
can
que
help
nosotros
us
podamos tener un permiso.
so that we can get a permit.
Estamos dispuestos
We are willing
a pagar el precio
to pay the price
siempre y cuando ustedes nos ayuden.
just as long as you help us.
Gracias por todo.
Thank you for everything.
Gracias por su presencia esta noche. Next, we have Miriam Espinosa, followed by Robert Porter, and followed by Ali Payne. Miriam Espinosa.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es
Good
Miriam
evening.
Espinosa.
My name is Miriam Espinosa.
Yo soy vendedora ambulante
I am a
también
street vendor as well
por más de 5 años
for more than 5 years
aquí en la ciudad de San Bernardino.
here in the city of San Bernardino.
Yo doy gracias hoy en esta noche a los
I give
concejales,
thanks to the council members,
a Van Reynoso y Kimberly
Mr.
Galvin.
Reynoso and Kimberly
Galvin
Galvin,
por su apoyo.
Calvin, for your support.
El motivo de mi presencia
The reason why I'm here
es para pedirles a ustedes una moratoria,
is to ask for you, of you, a moratorium,
ya que han sido varios meses, como
Since-
mencionan mis compañeros,
since it has been several months, as my partners have explained,
que nos molesta la policía y la ciudad,
that the police bothers us, and so does the city,
quitándonos nuestro material de trabajo.
taking away our working material.
Nos perjudica el día que nos quitan las cosas,
They ruin the day for us, the day that they take those things away from us.
ya que estamos el día a día trabajando,
Since we're working day to
invirtiendo,
day, investing,
y al decomisarnos nuestro
and
material
when,
es una pérdida
and
muy
when they
grande.
remove the material that we work with, it is a great loss.
Es una inversión bastante costosa,
It is a very expensive investment,
más para nosotras las madres
more
solteras
for us single mothers
que trabajamos para nuestros hijos.
that work for our children.
En mi persona yo tengo una hija que está enferma,
Personally,
no puede trabajar y
I have
depende de
a
mí,
daughter that is sick. She cannot work and she depends on me.
y que es imposible irme a trabajar a una
And
bodega
it is
o algo
impossible for me to go and work at a warehouse or something like that.
cuando mi trabajo que tengo me permite estar
And
con ella
the
o
work that I
llevarla
do
conmigo.
right now allows me to be with her and to take her with me.
Es que por eso yo les pido hoy
That is why I'm asking of you today
esa moratoria de que para que
that
nos paren
moratorium
de quitarnos nuestras cosas y
so that you can stop taking away our
poder
things
trabajar,
and for us to be able to work.
ya que también pues se aprobó la ley y
Since there
entra
was,
en vigor
and since there is a law that was approved and it goes in effect
hasta año próximo.
until next year,
Yo les pido por favor ese apoyo.
I
que se
ask that
toquen
you
el
support us,
corazón,
that please have the heart,
porque la mayoría somos madres
because the
solteras
majority of us are single mothers,
teniendo nuestro puesto ambulante.
being street vendors.
Se los pido por favor.
I ask
ya
you,
que
please,
todos estamos dispuestos
since we are all willing
a pagar lo que nos pidan
to
por
pay
permisos
whatever you require
los
for permits
requisitos
or
que nos
the
pidan,
requirements that you ask of us,
porque es en lo único que sabemos
because
trabajar
that is all that we know
honorablemente.
how to work honorably.
Muchas gracias por escucharnos.
Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you. Next, we have Robert Porter, followed by Ali Payne. Robert Porter.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, good people. First thing on my mind is please pass the Arts and Historical Preservation, kind of our suggestions for the arts grant. We tried to be very equitable. Not everybody got what they wanted, but we did try to be very equitable. The other thing I want to talk to you all about is more the historian side of me. So I'm kind of caught in the middle here between the SECMs and civil rights history, right? So if we do change the ordinance and we're going to rename the park anything, right? I would suggest the Civil Rights Park, right? And we focus on people like Frederick Douglass, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Cesar Chavez, Doris Huerta, John Lewis, and then we could have little areas where we do the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and 1864 and have it all over the park so people can learn as they're walking these new paths. And then also have a kiosk that explains Lopez versus Secom 1944 case and how it led to desegregation at Paris Hill Park Plunge. And kind of really led the civil rights movement in the United States of America. And to please the Secom family, who some still reside here in the city, because you all know that the mayor isn't the only one who makes decisions. The council makes decisions as well, and it's kind of a government decision. It's just the case focuses on Secom. So maybe since Ormond Secom had nothing to do with William Secom's, case, maybe we could just leave the park lake named Secom Lake. Possible. It's just an idea. So instead of creating an atmosphere where it's like kind of in spite of more as we focus on the history itself. And that could bring people together, because I talked to Teddy about this, and I talked to a lot of you about this, and I understand your points of view, I totally do. But I think bringing us together with a lesson in history, and that could bring people to the park, the Civil Rights Park, right? Then we can put statues up of Martin Luther King there, and Dolores Huerta, and you know, it would be awesome. So that's just my suggestion. I've been really thinking a lot about this. I want to try to bring both sides together. I know this is in its infancy, and you may have to change an ordinance to even get there. But if you do, like a civil rights park would be awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. I could be wrong, but I think Holcomb might have been on the council at that time too. So, last we have Allie Payne, followed by our written comments. Ms. Payne.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening. It's an honor to speak to the only 6 people that I really like on the dais. Anyways, the best the dais has ever looked. Anyways, I come to you as a constituent, as a community member, as one of the big mouth members of the community. I love San Bernardino. I love the people. I love the kids more than anything. It's really frustrating and hard not to cry. Because as a constituent and just as a community member and as a mom, a single mom, I put my all into trying to give my best to the community, and just instead of just being a community member that sits and talks crap and complains, I really try to be proactive and be involved in the community and do what I can. And it's frustrating to see the community just go down and down and down. I don't know if a lot of you are aware, last month we had the biggest amount of evictions handed out from Fontana Court to the city of San Bernardino. I myself will be homeless in the next 2 weeks. The building I live in is facing foreclosure. They did not tell me. They kept accepting my rent. So now I have to figure out how to build a tent or make my car into a house. And that's frustrating. I'm on 2 commissions. I ran for city council. I feed the homeless every week. I do what I can not to let my right hand know what my left hand is doing. But when you give your all and try to do your best for a city, it's hard to see city leaders and people that are in power not do what they can. The people here tonight aren't asking for anything ridiculous like water fountains and water parks. They're asking to sell tacos and pay fucking rent. That's crazy that we have to come here and beg our city to do those things. So you 6 are the people that I have the most respect for, and all I'm standing here doing is remind you why you took these seats. You didn't take these seats for the paycheck. You didn't take these seats for the attention or the clout. You took these seats to help the people, to help the mothers like your mothers, like the children that you once were. These kids are crawling out of cars to go to school, walking through encampments to get to school, and about to be homeless a month before Christmas. You guys need to do what you can. Get on the phones, encourage the 2 people that aren't here today to do what they can. Not because you're getting paid to do it, because you have morality, because you remember what it is to be a kid growing up in the hood. Look at the city you're taking a paycheck from. It's falling apart. Kids are crawling out of cars on Christmas. How can you even go to sleep at night? That's crazy to me. People are sitting here begging to sell tacos and pay rent. They're not even asking for anything ridiculous. And I come to you as another human, as a friend. A lot of you have a lot of respect for a lot of you guys up there right now, but you can do more and encourage your peers to do more, because kids are suffering, families are suffering, and you guys really have power to do a lot more than you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to written comments. I'll recognize the city clerk if we have any ADA accommodations.
Yes, we have one. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and staff for your service to our city, and I am happy the elections are over. Now the real work begins as we try to mix our different ideas together for the benefit of all of us. Thank you, Mr. Field, for putting together a very attractive and informative newsletter that tells us what is going on in the various departments within the city. I even send it out to others that might not be on your email list. I also thank you for the new way of having the agenda and the packets to the agenda displayed for all of us to have backup information. Thank you. And thanks to our city clerk's office for putting me, a retired disabled publisher, on the list to receive the notice that the agenda is ready. I really appreciate that. There are 2 agenda items which I wish to comment on briefly. number 8 and 16. I did a quick review of the Aspen Institute City Learning Action Lab playbook, and I hope it is an inclusive plan that includes all citizens. I am in support of you accepting the grant from the Department of Justice and for you to make it a priority to hire citizens from San Bernardino as police officers. I am fully convinced that we cannot have an effective community policing program until we have most of the police living in the community that they serve. According to the last year's report on sworn police officers living in the city was 17 or 7%. The Department of Justice called the grant a community-oriented policing service grant. If the police lived in the community, they would not have to get an orientation of their community, but could be taught how to provide good police services to their neighbors. I also want to say keep moving forward with bringing in a group that represents all races and females on the force. Thank you for your time, service, and working together as council and staff. Hardy Brown, a proud 61-year resident living on the west side in San Bernardino. And that concludes public comments.
I believe, Councilmember Charette, you had also received a written email, or, I don't know. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I did, and I don't know. I don't think we have a policy on this. And from time to time over my career, I've been asked to read. I've had a constituent ask me to read something, and I certainly don't want to set a precedent, and I think we probably need to look at how these written comments get read. But I'm going to read this tonight. If I had been more Johnny on the spot, I would have sent it to you and had you read it. But I'm going to go ahead and read it. This is I don't know this person. It was asked of me to read it. It's from someone named Stephanie Sykes, and these are her words. Greetings. I have lived 52 years of my 54 years in San Bernardino. During my first 4 years or so, this was an absolutely wonderful place to grow up in. My parents and siblings shared a myriad of good things. Yes, I still remember a few from the way back then. Then a few misguided politicians came on the scene from all directions. To name a couple, there were U.S. Congressman George Brown and Mayor Judith Vias/Smith, whatever convenient name she chose at the moment. Just look at what has happened. We now look like some third world population center reminiscent of Nairobi or Saigon. Downtown is a shambles and neighborhoods infested with an endless array of street vendors. Would you care to guess how many of the latter are reviewed by the health department or even populated by legal occupants of our once desirable abode? No licenses equal lost city revenue. No licenses most likely lead to poor sanitation and debris-related disease. This cancer has metastasized into the sanctuary city we have today. This is sickening, and you folks seemingly don't give one happy damn. Again, signed by Stephanie Sykes.
Thank you. Any online? Zoom? No. Okay. We will then move on to discussion items. We have item number 3, the discussion of recent state law that provides tenant protection and consideration of establishing local tenants' Bill of Rights. Mr. City Manager.
Good evening and thank you. The discussion on this item tonight will be led by Cassandra Searcy, who's our Housing and Homelessness Deputy Director. So, Cassandra, please.
Thank you, Council. So today we actually have a presentation for you on the California Tenant Protection Act, also known as Assembly Bill 1482, and specifically at Council's direction, the city can choose to expand upon AB 1482 to adopt one of the tenant protection measures that will be identified in this presentation. So, let's see if I can get this. In October of 2019, Governor Newsom approved AB 1482. And the purpose of this bill was to protect tenants from unfair housing practices, significant rent increases, and wrongful evictions. AB 1482 came into effect on January 1st, 2020, and it will remain in effect until January 1st, 2030. There are two main functions of AB 1482. The first is some level of rent control, and the next is what's called just cause evictions. And the reason for just cause evictions is so that there are limits placed on, or at least lawful limits placed on how or why a person can be evicted. So first, let's examine rent control. So as it stands under AB 1482, landlords must still provide at minimum a 30-day notice if they're going to increase the rent. But specifically, rents cannot be increased beyond 5% plus the current CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, or 10%, or whichever is lower. So let me kind of break this down for examples. If our city's local CPI was 4%, and the permissible rate is 5%. When you add the two together, that means that legally a landlord could raise the rent by a total of 9%. Now, although 10% is allowed, the landlord must go with the lower rate. So as another example, if our CPI was 10%, when you add the 10% CPI plus the admissible 5% increase, that's a total of 15%. In this particular situation, the landlord must only go with the 10% increase, not 15%. By state law, they must go with the lower rate. Also, rent can only be increased 2 times within a 12-month period. And even with the 2 increases within a 12-month period, the rent cannot increase beyond the permissible rate of 5% plus the local CPI, or 10%, or whichever is lower. Also, if you are a covered tenant, and I'm going to explain what that means by a covered tenant, as I'm also going to explain what it means by a property that's covered under AB 1482. But if you are a covered tenant and your landlord increased your rate beyond the permissible limit, then by law, the landlord is supposed to decrease your rate. However, the landlord does not have to pay tenants back for any amount of rent that was paid over the permissible rate. So there are some flaws with 1482. The rent by law should be decreased, but you will not receive 1 red penny back for any amount that you paid over the permissible rate. And then also, if you are a master tenant, you cannot sublease at a higher rate that's allowed by law. So the other protection under AB 1482 is what's called just cause evictions. There are specifically 2 forms of just cause evictions. You have at fault and no fault evictions. Now, as you can see, there's a list of things here for at fault evictions. For instance, failure to pay your rent, violating a lease, committing a nuisance, damaging property, the tenant refuses to sign a lease, and the lease is something similar to what they previously had, criminal activity, subletting without the landlord's approval, refusal to allow landlord entry to make repairs in case of emergency or under a court order, and failure to vacate after providing written notice. Now, for what's considered at-fault evictions, the landlord is not required to pay relocation expenses. However, for no-fault evictions, and the examples of no-fault include the landlord or their family wishing to move into your unit. And when I say unit, I mean your rental property, whether it's an actual apartment unit, an ADU, or a single-family home. Also, if the landlord withdraws the rental property for whatever reason, maybe they want to move out the country or they want to sell. If there is an order issued by the court or government declaring that the tenant must vacate, maybe there's public health and safety reasons, or if the landlord wishes to demolish or substantially remodel a unit. Those are all examples of no-fault evictions, in which case, according to AB 1482, the landlord must provide at least, well, not at least, the landlord must provide 1 month's rent, and that must be provided within 15 days of the notice eviction. Please understand, AB 1482 does not stop or prevent at-fault evictions. It only assists those for no-fault evictions. And like I say, AB 1482 is not perfect. So let me clarify who is actually covered under this protection. if you are a tenant and you've lived in a unit, a rental unit, for at least 12 months or longer, you're covered. That's part one. There's two parts to this. It's kind of complicated. But for the first part, if you lived in a unit for 12 months or longer, you are covered. However, if you move into a unit and it's been less than 12 months and you allow another adult individual move into your unit, the time stops. The 12-month no longer applies under AB 1482. Now you have to wait a full 24 months before you're covered under AB 1482. So it's not perfect. So again, it would behoove anybody, if you've lived in a unit for less than 12 months, to not let an adult move in. Otherwise, you're not officially covered under AB 1482. That's the first part. The second part, it depends on the property that you live in. All properties are not covered under AB 1482. I know here on this article it says that all the California properties are covered, but there are a lot of exceptions. And they include, as you can see, homes that are not owned by a corporation, a real estate trust, or LLC. Basically, that means that any home that's owned by a private individual or individuals is not covered under AB 1482. So that's a lot of properties in itself. And then also we're talking about homes that are dormitories, single-family residences, hotels, units that have some type of affordability covenant restriction. There's a lot of properties that are not covered. What I do want to say is that if you do own a home, and let's say you are a single individual or a private person, and for the most part your home should be exempt from 1482, AB 1482, but as the homeowner, if you fail to provide your tenant with notice that your property is exempt, well then legally that tenant can come after you and say, and get legal representation for you to lower their rent. So let me give you an example. If you're a tenant and you move into a home and you didn't receive proper notice that this property was exempt from AB 1482, you've been there for a full 12 months. Now it's time for your lease to be renewed. You still haven't received notice, and the landlord wants to increase your rent significantly. Well, then that tenant has legal ramification to say, no, you can only increase my rent by 5%, plus the local CPI or 10% or whatever is lower. Same applies for properties that are 15 years or newer. By law, a brand new property, 15 years or newer, cannot be held to AB 1482. But if the landlord or the owner fails to provide notice either in your lease-up agreement or in your renewal lease, then as a tenant, you have the right to push back and not go along with the significant rent increases that are above the permissible rate. So there are some things that tenants can do. I'm going to explain that in a minute in case you find yourself in this situation. To be fair, if you are a property owner, there are law firms and eviction agencies that can assist owners with developing the notice of exemptions and providing notices to tenants regarding just cause protections and rental caps. Now, if you are a tenant or a renter and you actually reside in a building and you've been there for 12 months or longer, and your building is not exempt from AB 1482 based off of the listings that I just read, and your landlord still increases your rent, where we're talking pretty significant, 20, 30, 40, 50%. We're hearing some individuals that say they've had their rent increased by $300, $400, just ridiculous amounts. Then there are some repercussions that an individual can take. One, you can obtain a letter template and you can personalize it, because there are some landlords who are not fully aware of AB 1482. Despite this being a state law, in full transparency, the state did not do a great job with publicizing this law. So you could choose to give your landlord the benefit of the doubt and hand them the letter and make them recognize that they are violating a state law. And if that landlord still refuses to comply and bring your rent down to the permissible rate, then that tenant has legal repercussions. They can choose to connect with an agency like Inland Fair Housing Mediation Board, or they can connect with a legal team such as Inland County Legal Services, or they can seek legal counsel because they actually have a claim and they can push back. for the most part, there is just misinformation and there's a lack of education. You hear often from Inland Fair Housing and Mediation Board that there are numerous complaints coming in from individuals who are receiving significantly high rental increases, and they're kind of bullied by their landlord. They don't fully know their rights, and so they end up signing a lease agreement because they don't know what else to do. They need a place to live, or they choose to leave not realizing that they have legal claim to stand their ground. So it's going to be a conjoined effort where agencies like Inland Fair Housing, even the city, we're looking to put something up on our website to provide more education to people so that they don't just fold in, not recognizing that they actually have a legal claim against landlords that are charging unfair rental prices for covered properties. Now, in terms of the city, there's some things that we can do to expand AB 1482 because, as you can see, it truly is just a base for tenant protection. There are a lot of exemptions. There are a lot of loopholes. So some of the things that the city can do to help expand tenant protections is that we can require landlords to perhaps pay 2 or even 3 months rent for no-fault evictions. And if we want to make things simpler, maybe the tenants can refrain from collecting rent for 2 to 3 months, allowing tenants a better chance to save their earnings so that they can move to new dwellings. We can place limitations on rental application fees. If you've ever looked for a place to stay, more than likely you have gone to several locations. You're trying to find something close to your children's school or close to your job. And after you've gone to a few places, those rental fee applications, they really add up. So perhaps the city can look at placing limits on the application fees. We could perhaps look at allowing tenants the ability to manage their own repairs and then provide the receipts to the landlords to reduce their rent based off of the repairs that were made to their apartments. And the reason we're suggesting this is because there are a lot of tenants who have complained about their landlords not making timely and proper repairs, complaining about slum landlords, and there are other cities that have used this method so that tenants do not have to live in unsafe conditions. They can continue to maintain their housing, but then also not be affected by still having to pay regular rent and having to make their own repairs on top of that. So that's just another option. We can look at adopting a resolution where we can direct further studies to look at rent stabilization. Typically, when you talk about rent stabilizations, lawsuits follow. So the city definitely wants to be careful, but this is something that should be looked at and is something that's necessary because even though we have AB 1482, there's not enough individuals or agencies that can assist people such as low-income individuals regarding these legal matters. You would either have to get a group of tenants to come together and perhaps do a class action lawsuit against their landlord, or individuals would have to take it upon themselves to seek legal representation from agencies such as Inland County Legal Services or Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino. We can also look at forming a housing ad hoc committee so that we as a city can identify and address these housing issues and then provide further recommendation for city council's consideration. Ultimately, AB 1482, it's a nice start. It does provide some protections, but in full transparency, there are a lot of gaps, and as a result, it's not sufficient enough to stop landlords from gouging the rents. So it's something for the council to consider just to strengthen our own local tenant protection law, something that we don't currently have. So with that said, I want to shift gears regarding the mobile home ordinance. The city actually has an existing mobile home rent ordinance, and this ordinance covers approximately 48 mobile home parks within city limits. There is a space rent ceiling that's in place, and also for landlords who choose to go beyond the permissible space rent for mobile homes, there is a process. There's due diligence where a hearing officer who is administrative hearing officer, not connected with the city, they overhear the process, and it's this third-party entity that determines if the rental increase is fair, and it's up to the mobile home park agency to provide sufficient evidence to support its request for rent increases. So that is something that currently exists. We have not had a mobile home rent hearing in the last 10 years. We actually had one. It was the last mobile home rent hearing was in 2012, up until 2 weeks ago. And I can tell you the outcome of the most recent mobile home hearing, which was 2 weeks ago, the hearing officer ruled in favor of the tenant, so that rent increase did not go through, and the hearing process does work. So with that said, that concludes this presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. We do actually have 3 speakers for this item. So I'll just call them at this time. We have Dolores Armstead, followed by Julie Paul, followed by Ben Benoit. Well, here's the thing, and I spoke to the city attorney about this. Although this isn't a public hearing, these individuals should have been called during public comment, but they were separated, unfortunately, under and it's my fault. I should have looked at it a little bit closer. They should have been called during public comments, but because for the sake of public input, it's just 3 speakers, so we'll just move forward and have them come forward and speak. So my apologies for that. We have Dolores Armstead, followed by Julie Paul, followed by Ben Benoit.
Hello. I want to say thank you very much for making it more clear. I have no comment. She clarified quite a bit of the information for me.
Thank you very much. Julie.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Julie Polly with the WMA, and we represent mobile home park owners. And I think a big missing part of the presentation to you and looking through the packet of what's been provided to you is it might be jarring, as Councilman Reynoso had mentioned, that mobile home parks are exempt from 1482, and there's actually reason for that. Mobile home parks have had just cause eviction protections from the state embedded in the mobile home residency law for, I'm guessing anyone that's currently in a mobile home park has had just cause eviction the entire time they're there. It's been 30 or 40 years. Because residents have such substantial investment in their homes, the state recognizes the uniqueness of that tenancy. And so they've provided those protections in state law, and it preempted a lot of local control over some of those areas that are encapsulated in the MRL. So hopefully you can get more information about the MRL. For instance, a difference between apartments and mobile home parks. In mobile home parks, you have to issue a 90-day notice on a rent increase. Apartments are 30 days. And in San Bernardino, you have a local rent control ordinance that caps rents at 80% of CPI. So it's not CPI plus, it's sub-inflationary. And you also cap rents on what the park owner can charge when the space turns over and someone is buying the coach from the homeowner. So there's a lot of protections there locally, there's protections in the state, and there's one new resource that you should be aware of, and that's the Mobile Home Residency Law Protection Program. One of the criticisms of the MRL is that the residents had to go to court to get it enforced. I think the legislature, I believe last year, or maybe it could have been 2020, so I'm sorry, it's starting to all blend together, recognized that this was burdensome and that they needed a resource to enforce the MRL. Residents pay for it, and it's administered by HCD, and if there's any violation of the MRL, HCD notices the park owner and gives them an opportunity to cure it to the satisfaction of the resident. And if the resident is not satisfied that the MRL violation has been cured, they get referred to legal aid. So there's a lot of support there for mobile home residents. They're probably one of the most protected tenants, but I appreciate your concern about them, Councilman, and I would love an opportunity to meet with you and we can talk more about if there's a certain park that this is of a concern. I'd love to work with the city and see what we can do to resolve problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Ben Benoit.
Thank you,
Oh, there you are,
Councilmember
that's
and
it.
council
Thank you.
members. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Ben Benoit. I'm with the California Apartment Association. Although I won't be with that organization much longer, I'm going to be moving on to another position. So I want to speak to you as a brother. My sister lives in your city. She's a homeowner here, and I know that she really wants to see this city do well, and I do too. And one thing that I've recognized in a lot of cities that I've watched go through many questions like what's been brought up tonight is when things like rent stabilization or rent control are talked about, folks in the industry hear that. And when that's brought up in issues like tonight, and especially when it's not really on the agenda but was talked about, people ask me regularly, or what cities are talking about that? And I think I talked about this when I was here about a year ago when this came up last time. And I mentioned a story where people have called and asked me from mortgage brokers and other folks from New York City asking about funding. And those folks have called me over this last year, not about your city, but about other cities, Rancho Cucamonga, Upland. And I was able to tell them, no, those cities aren't contemplating any other further tenant protections. They're not contemplating other rent control. And they were happy to hear that. And those projects seem like they're moving forward. But both times, those calls, they then asked, are there any other cities in the area contemplating rent stabilization or other rent tenant protections? This is the unintended consequences of some of these protections. When you put some of these protections in place that sound good and feel good, and I think we definitely need help here, especially those tenants that are living in substandard buildings. And quite frankly, if there are members, we will kick them out. That is not the type of members that our organization represents. But as we hear about those items, I think that's separate from rent stabilization, because at the end of the day, if we continue to talk about that in this city, those brokers, when they hear that San Bernardino's talking about that, ask their secretaries to go through their files, see if they have any performers, and twice I've heard them say, yes, we do. And then that's the end of the conversation about that project, because they're going to go to the next city that is not doing those things. So if we want to see major development, if we want to see the types of development that I heard some of these cities, sometimes we talk about in the city as far as the downtown, hopefully getting some from fresh love like Riverside has gotten from these larger buildings. If we want to see the Carousel Mall with multifamily housing and large components of that, I urge you, take rent control or rent stabilization out of this conversation, because it is hurting your city. These projects can't move forward when that happens. And it is not me saying that as a member of that organization that I just spoke about. I'm just saying as someone who wants to see the city do better and wants to see the city improve. I don't want you guys to continue to have these conversations and hurt that opportunity for that. So that's my biggest suggestion tonight as a brother that has a sister that lives in this city, not as a member of the California Apartment Association. Have a good night.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and I'll follow up with council members if you have any questions, comments, or Councilmember Reynoso.
Thank you. You forgot to mention that you're also a council member. I'm going to be very direct. I'm just going to hit bullet points, and you can take notes or you can watch it back later. Things that I like. Based on this, not like formal motion, but I know this is like an opportunity to give direction. So if you pull up that last screen that you had, the recommendations. Yeah, the other options, I'm sorry. Here's your last slide. Had some technical difficulties. All right, I'll just read some stuff off. We'll get back to that. I wanted to ask how we plan to advertise AB 1482 citywide, and I heard you mention something regarding the city's website. I think it'd be cool if it was like a city website section that's like a need to know for landlords and property owners to house that. The 30-day notice for rental increase, I would like to see that go as far as 90. I'm willing to compromise on 60. I would like, is it possible? I guess when I'm reading these things, you don't have to answer me. You could just like report back next time, because a lot. The must pay back amount paid over a permissible rate, if it's possible to get the landlords to pay that back, I would like that written. The landlord pay relocation for no fault eviction, I would like that to be 2 months. The validity of a tenant being in the unit for 12 months and being basically classified or protected by AB 1482, I would like, if it's possible, for that extra tenant, if someone moves in with them, because that happens a lot, if we're able to not honor the 24 and make it legitimate at 12, the same protection. I would like to require landlords to have 1482 listed, 1482 exempt. I'm basically saying these things so that like legally enforceable. I view most things through like, will it stand up in court, even though most people can't afford to go to court? And that brings me to a point I have in here about what can we do in-house regarding legal resources for tenants or tenant groups, and how can we couple that with like, this would be a way to inform us about slumlords that exist. And I want to create some kind of like legal parameter. I think there's an appetite here to handle slumlords. And that's how you find out about it, is when they come. When they actually do have the ability to organize, it's not gonna be a lot. But if we had somewhere that could come in the city and they're not feeling like I'm just being brushed off, like, okay, yeah, she's taking document of this, they're gonna go investigate the site, and then we can offer you legal resources. And then possibly, obviously, we're not gonna put city attorney on retainer, but anything we can legally to help them. And then the mobile home rent hearings that we have one like every 10 years, if there's not a requirement, can we make it a requirement to at least have one once a year, at least? And that's it. You don't have to answer any of that stuff, but those are my ideas.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember, did I see Councilmember Calvin?
Thank you, Ms. Searcy, for your presentation. I appreciate that. I'd like to echo a couple of, or have a couple of questions answered that you mentioned. So I want to, just for clarification, are you stating that the city, we do not have any policies or ordinances currently that are in place to govern move-ins, move-outs, and whether or not property owners, particularly apartment owners, are not taking care of their properties? We don't have that in place? Because I thought that we did have an ordinance that regulated that.
Are you talking about an ordinance in terms of making sure that a property is following health and safety standards, or are you talking about rental evictions? What specifically are you?
So health and safety standards?
Yes, we do have something for health and safety.
So we do have that for health and safety
Yes,
standards?
uh-huh.
Okay, and so is that being enforced? Because how do we then have with as many slumlords in our city?
Yeah, okay, I'm unable to answer that, unfortunately. I think that's more of a question related to, we do have a code enforcement department, and I believe that falls under their purview, but I'm unable to answer that at this time.
So can someone please answer for me?
Good evening, City Council. Nathan Freeman, Community Economic Development Director. To answer your question, Council Member, one of the things we have restarted recently with the Code Enforcement Division is our crime-free multifamily housing. Every apartment, 4 units or greater, is required by City Council ordinance to participate in that. That includes classes, one of which was held today, which we had almost 30 participants, and annual inspections to make sure that they're complying. Unfortunately, due to staffing and COVID for the last 3 years, we were not able to do that. However, with additional staffing, again, thank you to the City Council for your support in code enforcement, we have been able to restart that. We had our first meeting on September 28th. We had another one today. We had well over 30 participants in our first round, and we had an equal amount today.
Who are the participants?
They are owners or representatives of apartment units in our community.
So with that, they agreed to participate in the program? Is that what I'm understanding?
They have no choice, ma'am. They are required.
They're consenting to inspections?
They are.
And that's going to begin, the inspections will begin when?
Immediately.
So are we then going back and looking at all of our code enforcement claims to verify, you know, I'm sure that that's a heavy backlog, right? So are we going back, looking at those claims and beginning to having someone on staff address those and going out to all of those sites?
Yes.
Then they'll be reporting back to code enforcement or underneath
So
your...
we have a team in code enforcement dedicated solely to this issue.
So I would then like, if council could then be provided with that information as you guys are going through those code enforcement claims, being able to create a report, reporting back to us stating that those, how many are being evaluated, so that we don't have to then hear that then from this position, we're taking a more proactive position.
Staff is happy to do that.
Any further? Councilmember Calvin, does that conclude? Any other council members?
You know what, there's something I liked, and only irresponsible landlords would be against this. There was a discussion about having tenants having recourse to be compensated for any repairs they need to make concerning the habitability. I would need to make sure that if this is a facet we add, that it makes sure very clearly that it's at the tenant gave I would say at least a 30-day notice to the landlord to remedy the issue. And after those 30 days, that tenant would then be able to make those repairs and then has legal recourse to recoup the money. But it needs to be very clear that it's specifically for issues concerning habitability. I don't want a tenant painting the walls inside the house and saying, well, I didn't like this color, and by the way, I'm a very expensive painter, so it's going to cost you $2,000 because I decided to repaint the house. It needs to be specifically for habitability issues. It needs to be for habitability issues, and it needs to be clear that the tenant has the obligation or has the responsibility of giving at least a 30-day notice that they will be doing those repairs if the landlord doesn't solve those issues. No, yeah, obviously no cosmetic. Again, habitability. Yeah, no cosmetic. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Councilmember Calvin?
And that can actually be very problematic, right? When tenants are doing the repairs, for instance, if they have mold in their homes. We have to address, that's a very, very, problematic situation. There's plumbing, and I know for a fact that folks have called out their own plumbers, and then landlords are, I'm not paying for that, right? So how do we, address that? Because I would not want to have folks going out making their own repairs, and then you have who's the determining person that says, oh, I'm going to reimburse you, or I'm going to take that off the rent, or I'm not going to take that off the rent. And when we're dealing with habitable issues, right, mold is an uninhabitable issue, and we should be addressing that, but we don't want tenants going in and taking care of a mold situation or a plumbing situation on their own. So what are we going to do with that?
So we can actually form an ad hoc committee where we can outline policies and procedures so that we're not just kind of haphazardly saying what should take place or what should not take place. And then we can utilize services from an actual either attorney or consultant to make sure that we're doing things that are in line, that's safe, that improves habitability, but also that we're not just allowing reckless activities with people just saying, well, I want this done because I want it done. It may not be necessary. So I know I'm not an attorney, I'm not an expert. We actually need experts at the table to help us implement strategies to move forward.
But when we're talking about habitable issues, right, and those are issues or claims where code enforcement should be going out, right?
Correct.
And be the determining factor as to how and if a tenant does have mold in their issue, that is a health and safety issue, correct? Mm-hmm. And should be addressed immediately, and that means then that the code enforcement begins to interact with the property manager or owner, right? And determining that they then have to take care of that issue, right, expeditiously. So I think that we even need to make sure, not sure if if it's already written inside of AB 1482, but for the city's sake, that we are making sure that code understands what do you need to come back and immediately deal with. And I believe I asked of this from city attorney and the city manager, that how is code addressing what is something that is immediate, something that's totally inhabitable, something that we need to address right now.
So the city attorney and I have had several conversations about this recently. The update that Mr. Freeman just gave comes from that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are other cities that have developed similar programs, and I think one of the things that we have generally agreed to do is to look at those programs and look at those ordinances and see what sort of cherry pick the best of the best and assemble a packet of ordinance revisions or new ordinances that we can bring forward to the city council for your consideration to realize all of these goals. So we are, Sonia and I have already had that discussion. We're in the process of assembling that now.
And I know that you all have, but it's a pressing issue, right? And I just want this to be one that is brought back to us as soon as possible, because what we're hearing throughout the entire, many council meetings, one right after the other, of these uninhabitable facilities or apartment complexes, dormitories, all of that we just simply need to have control of. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sanchez, followed by Councilmember Alexander.
Yeah, if we were to go down this path, I would insist that it be done through our hearing officer, a professional who's impartial, and so I wouldn't want some sort of ad hoc committee. It would need to go before a hearing officer. And I want to make it clear that we tame expectations a little. We can go ahead and say, oh, we'll get code enforcement to solve all those problems. But what happens when there's been a grievous violation? Right, is code enforcement going to go there with a contractor and replace the water heater, kill them? Yeah, so the hammer they have a very limited tool belt here. And what they'll do is they'll shut down the place. And when they shut down the place, what happens? People get thrown out onto the street. So that's not the option. We want to give people an option, right? Just think of the scenario of someone whose water heater just broke down. And it's in the middle of winter. They've been pestering the landlord. Hey, I don't have hot water. I don't have hot water. Please fix it. Please fix it. Please fix it. They can go ahead and replace the water heater. But guess what? They have no legal recourse to recoup the money. But if we put this ordinance in place, that individual can say, hey, look, I've given you a notice. My kids are freezing when they take a shower in the morning. Can we go ahead and get this fixed? Otherwise, I'll fix it, and then I'll recoup the money on the back end. So that's it. But again, and there is a legal definition of what habitable is. So it's in the law books. It's in our state code. So we need to abide by that code about what habitability is, and then apply that under these circumstances.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yeah, just one question on the no-fault evictions. Does that include single-family residents?
That includes single-family residents only if they're owned by a corporation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schritt.
My only comment, and I'm going to wait for what we're giving direction for tonight, is to consider further studies and relative to these issues, and you're going to be coming back with best practices from other cities, as well as some of our own, perhaps. And I'm willing to wait for. I'm obviously going to wait for that, and anxious to see it. So many of our, this is kind of contradicts, I think, what was just said, maybe, but so many of the issues that we find that we have in this city of San Bernardino are code related. And I'm just going to say once again from the dais that we need to be doing everything we possibly can to be continuing to build that department. That will make some of the policing that's done easier. It will make a lot of things easier on if we have a really robust and code enforcement and a method. I don't know if you call it a hotline or whatever, but how we get complaints in here and get them dealt with expeditiously and appropriately. So I'm all for code enforcement. I think they're, in many cases, can be as valuable as a police officer, because I think we get rid of some of these code violations, and it's going to save the police department some of the issues that they're having to deal with. And so it's the old broken window theory, and we've got to fix these issues and hold the businesses and the tenants, the landlords and people accountable for providing. But I stop short of
putting a lot of controls on the private business sector. They have a right to run a business, and it should be done. I believe that business should be done between the customer and the owner of the business. And we can certainly add some, and AB 1482 certainly addresses some of those issues. I want to stop short of where we start telling business owners what they can and can't do if they're operating within the law and within regulations. So those are my comments, and I'll look forward for future discussions on this and future ordinances coming forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Reynoso.
Just the last thing, it's kind of like doubling down on the legal perspective. I'm aware of a lot of the tenant rights in the state of California, but a lot of them are not guaranteed. A lot of times you see them reflected when someone's part of an HOA, like what is speaking to the inhabitability. For example, like my sister, her roof collapsed in Inglewood, California, but because she was a part of an HOA, the landlord, or not the landlord, the HOA was required to pay like the relocation during the fix in a situation like black mold or something like that. If you could do some research on how feasible we can like legally protect them and require, but I know that would require some kind of legal aid internally, so people have like recourse for making sure like within a certain amount of time that they're able to, you know, be relocated during the duration of the repairs. That's my last thing.
And just,
Thank you.
if I might,
Please.
regarding, let me see, legal aid and go back, okay. And Inland Fair Housing and Mediation Board, I just had a couple questions. I'm hearing that a lot of tenants are saying that they're not being able to receive the help, that they've gone there, they're utilizing it, they're expressing what's going on, and the help is just not coming. That I don't know if they're overwhelmed. I know the city of San Bernardino is placing a lot on them right now. So in the event that tenants are not receiving the help that they're supposed to be, that they should, or are looking for what they're looking for, what else then do they have at their disposal? Or when we place them here, is this, are we saying here that we know for a fact this is what they're supposed to be able to do, that they are doing this? Do we have a relationship with them? Are they speaking to us about how many tenants from the city of San Bernardino are utilizing their services or that they're turning away?
Yeah, so the city contracts with Inland Fair Housing Mediation Board because they're the ones that handle our landlord tenants. We don't have the bandwidth to move forward. Not just our city, in many cities is Inland Fair Housing Mediation Board. I can't speak to their staffing capacity, if there's a reason why they're not able to assist as many individuals or what the complaints are specifically that you're hearing. But outside of Inland Fair Housing, the tenants can take legal action. They can either like I mentioned, if they're low income, go to Inland County Legal Services or Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino, or they can seek their own private legal counsel because they actually do have a claim. This is a legitimate law that's on the books, and they could seek attorney representation if they're being unfairly, if they're dealing with unfair housing practices at their rental property.
They would need to go and get outside counsel at their own expense.
Well, or contact Inland County Legal Services if they're low income. But if they're not low income, then yes, it would be at their own expense. But that is something that could be recouped because, as I stated, if they are a covered tenant and if that property is covered under AB 1482, meaning it's not one of the exemption properties, then they have a legal claim.
I just want to add, I think there have been some really creative approaches throughout the state because there is a lack of services, especially legal aid services. There aren't enough services to provide all the things that are needed. Some of the creative things that I've seen in some other cities that are similar to you, for example, is one of the cities has gone out and hired private attorneys at an hourly rate and asked them to sit at City Hall and at community centers a few days a week. And they just sit there for 3 to 5 hours. They take in the cases. They don't represent each and every person, but they have like the defense forms there, and they can offer some one-on-one advice to provide like forms, because as soon as someone can get that defense form in, at least they filed something in court that can help protect them. There are some other creative solutions where some of the local law schools, I know University of Laverne isn't so local for you, but local law schools where they'll send students out and we're doing some training between attorneys who do this work at legal aid or attorneys who do this work for pay, training some of those students who are then volunteering. Tricky because of the attorney-client privilege, but we're just trying to be creative and get outside the box. And we're hoping that some of our nonprofits and legal aid will join us in doing that, because really as the city attorney, I can't provide that legal advice to them. I can direct them, but when we're directing them to the legal aid services, there just is a long line and they are not getting the assistance they need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Undoubtedly, it is the aim of this council to explore options to make it as affordable as possible for the people to live in their home. You know, when we have more money following fewer goods, what ends up happening is that you have a higher cost. And when you flood the market with those goods, the cost of those items tend to go down too. So I'd like to also start exploring what is it that we're doing as a city to make it easier to build more homes in the city as well, just so that we can make it a little bit more affordable in the city. We certainly can't, granted we can't do anything as far as what's coming out of the state. I would certainly encourage to put some pressure on our state representatives to make it a little bit easier to build more homes in our state. But in the city, I'd like to also explore options as far as what can we do to make it a little bit easier to build more homes. Because by doing so, like I said earlier, if you flood the market with certain goods, you reduce the price of that item as well. So I would like to see what other things we can do to, again, it's not the only thing that's causing it, but it's one of the things as well. So, any other comments, questions?
So I think we've given pretty good direction to staff, right? So this is the extent of what you guys are working on. This is going to be our tenant bill of rights, right? I think, unless there's any objections to anything that Councilmember Reynoso or I brought up, right? Were we the only two who brought up points? Okay, so I think that's if that is the shape that our tenant bill of rights is taking, I'm very happy with that, and I would like to know when this is coming back. People on both sides of this issue want to know what their home or their investment or how it's going to be affected in the near future by legislation passed here on this council. So can we get a deadline, an estimate as to when this would come back before us for a final vote?
And what is our local CPI?
8.4.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Councilmember Sanchez, I'm going to get a lot of resources from our city attorney who works closely with the City of Santa Ana, and they have some really good pilot programs that we could look at to possibly mirror in our own city. And then we have the holidays coming up, so it's a fair estimate. We could probably bring something.
Pilot programs?
Well, they have, what's the actual name for it? They have tenant protection. They have a tenant protection program. I don't know the official name, but they do have something similar in the city of Santa Ana that seems to be very effective. And then the city attorney just mentioned too that they actually utilize certain legal groups, law students, things of that nature, to come in and provide that type of resource to citizens that have actual claims. Because as it was just mentioned, Inland County Legal Services, Legal Aid, they're backed up. So people are probably frustrated when they go to these agencies. They can't really get the help that they need. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is something that the city can also provide, so there's a voice for the people. So I'm going to actually be working closely with our city attorney and see if we can utilize some of these tools, bring that information back to our council, and because of the holidays, February council meeting seems like it would be justifiable.
Okay, and that's the one component concerning resources and experts who can help the tenants seeking out to protect their rights. And now on these points, I'm assuming that it'll come back together.
Yes.
Okay, but it's basically the resources that we can make available to the tenants so they can protect their rights, and then the facets, or no, rather all the bullet points that we brought up here today.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any last comments, questions? Is there, does this require a motion or no? Okay, so we'll be moving on to public hearings. we'll go on to public hearing item number 4. I'm opening the public hearing at 9:50 p.m. Could we please get a staff report on this item?
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. This evening, item number 4 before you is your consideration of a resolution to declare as surplus approximately 42 city-owned properties in accordance with the administrative policy that the council approved 2 weeks ago. So as the City Council and the Mayor Pro Tem may know, the city owns approximately 800 parcels-ish across the city. Now, most of those parcels are parks, they're street right-of-way. However, my department, specifically the Economic Development, Real Property Services, and Housing Division, did a very deep dive on all those city-owned properties. And from that list of roughly 800, my staff was able to identify approximately 100 city-owned properties that are vacant, currently costing the city to maintain, and desperately deserving of a second lease on life. So to be clear, of those 100 properties, you're probably asking why not declare them all as surplus at one time. I'll be honest, we do not have the staff capacity to do that in one setting. So what we have devised is to bring forth 3 phases of surplus declarations. And the properties before you this evening were chosen based on, call it 2 criteria. Number 1, the ability to procure housing, much needed housing in our community, and more specifically, affordable housing. And the second criteria was, have we as staff received interest from developers, whether it be a letter of intent or just, I would say like anything, an email, phone call, etc. Have we received interest? So these 42 before you tonight fit both of those criteria. So what we are asking you to do, again, in accordance with the Surplus Land Act and the administrative policy that you approved 2 weeks ago, is to adopt the resolution and tell staff to go through the SLA. And I'm just going to, sorry, here we go. So very quickly, as just a recap, and this was included in the administrative policy that you reviewed 2 weeks ago. The first step in this process, the City Council adopts the resolution as staff is requesting you do this evening. Staff tomorrow morning will send up a notice of availability to the state's Housing and Community Development Department. And basically what that does is it provides every affordable housing developer registered with HCD an opportunity to review these properties for the purposes of affordable housing. And in essence, we give them 60 days to say, I'm interested, or just, I'm not. And if we receive any interest from that solicitation, we are required by law to negotiate with them for 90 days. Now, assuming that we get no responses or we cannot come to an agreement, we send a notice to the state's Housing and Community Development Department, basically articulating our efforts, and they will send us a waiver, if you will, to take these properties out to the general public. And if you recall, as part of the administrative policy, there's a few ways that the city can dispose of those properties after that. We can put out a request for proposals seeking development, or we can receive unsolicited offers from the general development community. So rather than go through each one of these properties individually for the sake of time, they were included in your packet. I am more than happy to answer any questions related to any of the properties. I will state that my real property manager, Josh Ramatinos, is here as well, and our city planner, who also can answer any questions regarding zoning.
Thank you for that. We do have 2 public speakers for this item. I'll call on them now. We have Dolores Armstead, followed by Treasurer Ortiz.
Thank you. Since these are city-owned properties, that means our citizens' tax dollars paid for this, right? So I know you're going to notify the state's housing authority, but my question is, do any of the citizens get to sit on and find out who the proposed agencies are and what's their proposed use? Do we get to have any say-so or input on the proposals that you receive? Just because the city hasn't been that open in the past. So I believe that the citizens should have some say on what's being developed on properties that our tax dollars helped to the city to get. We know we need affordable housing. That's important. But I believe the citizens need to have a seat at the table allocating who gets the properties and what the properties are being used for. And if nobody wants to develop a certain property for housing, I thought it goes to another nonprofit for another beneficial use. That's my understanding, but maybe I'm wrong. But I still believe that the citizens should have some say in how our tax dollar properties, how they're being utilized, because first it should benefit the citizens of the city, the citizens of San Bernardino, and not necessarily just a private entity come in and deal with what they want. That's a question. Do we have any input at all? Thank you.
Thank you. And I do believe, I don't see Treasurer Ortiz anywhere in the audience, but Treasurer Ortiz is the next speaker. Okay. So I will now be closing the public hearing at 9:56 p.m. for deliberation and action. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments, questions, council members?
I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, definitely quite excited that we're going to be able to, with the housing crisis that we are in, I hope that every council member then will be ready to approve what developers come our way with a proposal to build some affordable housing in our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynoso, I don't know if I cut you off or if you had something to say. No? Other council members? None? Okay. Ms. City Clerk, let me take the roll, please.
Can we do a voice vote on this one? Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Surratt? Yes. Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 5. I am opening the public hearing at 9:57 p.m. Could we please get a staff report on this item?
Yes, the staff report this evening will be presented by Assistant Planner Elizabeth Mora Rodriguez. Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Good evening. Development Code Amendment 22-05. This is a development code amendment to amend several sections within our Title 19 of our land use designation. The section would be amending Chapter 19.02 for definitions. This would update all the definitions for the various commercial cannabis activity types. This would also be an update to the land use table within Chapter 19.06 for commercial zones, identifying all the different commercial cannabis activities. It would also update the land use table and district development standards in Chapter 19.08 for industrial zones. The purpose of these amendments listed is in an effort to maintain consistency between Chapter 5.10, which is what governs commercial cannabis within the city, and the Development Code, which governs land use. By updating the definitions and the development standards within the Title 19, it will ensure that commercial cannabis activities are consistent with the city's general plan and the Development Code's commercial and industrial land use designations. At this time, staff is recommended that the mayor and city council introduce, read by title only, and waive further reading of ordinance MC 1601, approving Development Code Amendment 22-05, and finding that the amendment is exempt under CEQA, as well as schedule the adoption of the ordinance to the regular scheduled meeting of December 7th. If you have any further questions, staff is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any requests to speak? Does anyone wish to speak on this item from the public?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm now closing the public hearing at 9:59 PM for deliberation and action. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Sanchez. Seconded by Councilmember Charette. Any comments, questions? Hearing none.
Read the title into the record.
Okay, please.
So ordinance number 1601, approving the Development Code Amendment 22-05, amending Section 19.02.020, definitions, Chapter 19.06, commercial zones, and Chapter 19.10, industrial zones of the City of San Bernardino Municipal Code, Title 19, to update the development standards for commercial cannabis activities in accordance with Chapter 5.10, commercial cannabis activities of the City of San Bernardino Municipal Code, and finding that the amendment is exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you. We proceed with the roll call, please. The vote, rather, I'm sorry.
Electronically, yes, yes. The motion passes.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to item number 6. The public hearing to consider annexation proceedings and elections for City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1, Maintenance Services, Annexation number 27 is now open. Do any council members wish to hear the staff report? Hearing none. Do any members of the council have any questions of staff or wish to make any comments? Hearing none. We will now receive comments, protests, and questions from any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the City Council for a maximum of 3 minutes. Please submit your speaker slip to the City Clerk.
We do not have any requests.
Okay. Has the City Clerk received any written protests?
I have received 0 written protests.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, are there any persons registered to vote within annexation number 27 of Community Facilities District number 2019-1? If so, how many registered voters are there?
The County of San Bernardino Register of Voters has certified that there are no registered voters within annexation number 27 of Community Facilities District number 2019-1.
I now declare the public hearing closed, the time being 10:02 p.m. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-235 of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, calling an election to submit to the qualified electors the question of levying a special tax within the area proposed to be annexed to Community Facilities District number 2019-1. Motion by Councilmember Charette.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sanchez.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-236 of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, declaring election results for Community Facilities District number 2019-1, Maintenance Services, Annexation number 27.
Move approval.
Motion by Councilmember Charette.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Reynoso.
I just need to read his part into the record.
Okay.
The official ballots have been open and all votes are in favor of the proposition presented on the ballot, and the election is now closed. Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I would now ask for a motion to waive further reading and introduce by title only an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, amending ordinance number MC-1602 and levying special taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2022-2023 to pay the annual costs of the maintenance and servicing of landscaping, lighting, water quality improvements, graffiti, street sweeping, parks, and trail maintenance. A reserve fund for capital replacement and administrative expenses with respect to City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1.
Move approval.
Motion by Councilmember Charette. Second by Councilmember Reynoso. Do we roll, or, I'm now closing the public, do I read that part, or do we take the vote?
Yeah, you've closed the public
Okay. I'm now closing the public hearing at 10:05 PM for deliberation and action. Do we have a motion?
Wait,
Yeah, I guess so. We already have, that's why I'm saying it's a little out of order here. but-
Okay.
Okay. So there was a move, Councilmember Charette moved, and I think Councilmember Reynoso seconded.
yes.
Okay.
So now
Proceed
on-
with the vote.
Okay, Councilmember Sanchez? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette? Yes. Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. It's getting late. My eyes are starting to go crazy here. We'll be moving on to the consent calendar at this time. We'll go by wards. We'll start with Councilmember Alexander. Any polls?
I just have a question on number 1. I'm new. Hold on. What's the first one? Number 7. Yeah, I just have a question. So whenever.
Is it a poll or just a quick question?
Just a question.
Okay, please.
Mr. City Manager, I know this is our lobbyists, Hurst, Brooks, and Espinoza. I just want to know, are they ever going to give us a year-end report of what they've actually done for the city and their contract?
Yes,
When are they going to do that?
end of the year, end of the calendar year. We'll make sure to get it to you by the end of this year, by December 31st. Probably before then, but yes.
So by the end of the
By the end of the
December
by the end of the
31,
calendar year.
the council will receive what they've actually done for the city?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Calvin, any polls?
No polls, 2 questions, and I need to state into the record that I need to recuse myself for item number 13.
Okay.
Councilmember, if you could just state the reason for the recusal.
Oh, I'm the CEO of that organization.
Thank you.
And you said you had 2 questions on other items?
I do. I just want to piggyback on Councilman Alexander's number 7. I know that we have met with our lobbyists once, and I really would like to meet with them on a more regular basis. I think that if the council would be able to provide some direction, I don't think we've been asked quite often about what it is that we want them to be lobbying on and for us. And so if we could just, have that to be part of the conversation as well, or the report, that we be given an opportunity to state that what it is that we feel that they should be, what's important to us down here.
Would you have a preference in terms of frequency? Like quarterly or every 2 months?
Quarterly
or-
sounds good.
Quarterly, okay, all right, okay.
So then my other question is on the bus stops, number 17. So I was wondering, why didn't we all get a bus stop that needed some work? Because we all have bus stops that need some improvements. And, just to kind of like be fair with that. So just a question.
Alex Kishta.
How are you determining what bus stops that we're doing those improvements on?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. What we do is we cooperate with Omnitrans because, Omnitrans is our co-partner when we apply for the TDA funding. So we explore what is their need, and we find out which one that they are the most in need, and the locations that we have in that is done. It is an agreement between both of us. So that is an area that is needed improvement in a way of a stop, meaning concrete, sidewalk, curb gutter is heaving, and they need access to it and stuff like that.
So I have 2 bus stops that don't have seats. One is directly in front of a senior complex, and then the other one is on, Major Street, on Baseline. So no seats, probably.
That is correct, but, this project is geared toward the concrete and toward the infrastructure. The shelters and the seats is provided by Omnitrans. So I will make sure that they'll know.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councilmember Reynoso, any polls?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay, Councilmember Charette, any polls?
Well, I don't know if I need to pull it. I want to register that I'm not prepared to vote on item number 7 tonight, the professional services agreement with Hearst Brooks and Espinosa. To me, I think that's maybe, it needs some more discussion on what we're doing with our lobbyists. I do believe we need a lobbyist, but I'd like to have a further discussion on exactly what we're getting from them, what they're doing, what we expect of them. I'd like to have a bigger discussion on it. So I'm not prepared to vote on that tonight to continue the agreement until we've had them in here and kind of perhaps somewhat of an interview and maybe go out to RFP and look for some and look for what we're getting and make sure we're getting a bang for our buck, because I don't feel like we are. I may be really wrong on that, but from my perspective, we're not getting a lot out of them, and I'd like to have further discussions. So if I need to pull it to vote,
we'll just go ahead and pull it then. So
then
for further
pull it.
discussion,
Then
that
you
way we
can
can
pull
just dedicate some time to it.
I think that is all that I have.
I have Councilmember Sanchez, any polls?
Pull 7 and 13.
7 and 13.
Move the balance.
Motion.
Second.
Move the balance, seconded by Sanchez. Council members, if you may please cast your votes.
Okay, the consent passes unanimously, and the record will reflect Councilmember Calvin's recusal on item 13.
Okay, we'll go ahead, and since there seems to be further need for discussion on item number 7,
Move to table item 7.
Second.
There's a move to table, call for the vote. There's no discussion on it, on a table, I'm sorry. Or at least that's my understanding, right?
There's no discussion
Okay.
on the table.
It's not debatable, okay. Call the vote. Yeah.
Voice vote on that.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso,
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Aye.
Okay, motion to table passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, item number 13. I believe it was Councilmember Sanchez who pulled it.
Yes, I would like to continue this item to the very next meeting with direction to staff that they include all the applications for the recommended awards. I would like for myself and for the public out there to know exactly where the money is being spent. Because I look at some of these, and these are reputable organizations, but I don't know if they're building a statue, planting trees, painting a mural. And I would like to see that, and I'm sure the public out there would love to know how the money's going to spend.
Not a problem.
All right, can we continue at the next meeting? That would be my motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Councilmember Charette.
And I'm not looking at it right at the moment, but I think what he's saying, and I agree, and just to make sure that I understand, we'd like to see the awardees, what they're using the money for, and I assume that that's in their application.
That's correct. There's a
So
description.
that they have to say, we're going to spend it on X.
Right, so
Okay.
we'll go ahead and give you a full
And then
file.
the one that's kind of does stick out to me is we're giving money to Pomona. I have a real problem with that unless I can get further understanding of it.
Absolutely. This was a big discussion with the Arts and Historical Preservation Commission, and the end result is that it is a direct benefit to the youth in San Bernardino, and so you'll see that in the application, and we'll hopefully get a good vote.
Then I'll make my judgment then
There you
whether it's a
go.
big benefit.
Any other comments, questions on? Nope. Okay. If we may please call for the vote for number 13.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette, Councilmember Reynoso,
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you for the
Just,
reminder.
council member can remain on the dais so long as the item was not pulled for discussion. So if it's pulled for
It's
discussion,
pulled for
you probably
discussion.
should leave the dais.
That's right.
It's okay.
Like, we ain't trying to hurt
They're
you,
gonna take a vote.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
Count-
Too late now. Aye.
Thank you. The motion to continue passes, and Councilmember Calvin recused herself from the item.
Thank you. That concludes the consent calendar. Moving on to items to be considered for future meetings. Item number 24, Councilmember Reynoso.
Move to approve.
This would be for the resolution declaring homelessness a state of emergency. Is there a, well, there's a motion
Second.
and seconded by Councilmember Alexander. Council members, if you may cast your votes, please.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Oh, we're not having, look, I know everyone thinks that this is going to come with a lot of money, and it really doesn't. If anything, it restricts our ability to our local control. Yeah, but look, it's worth the discussion so that at least we know that it doesn't come with money and it's going to restrict our local control, and the public should know that. So I'll vote for that discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Ditto on my colleague's comments at the far right of me.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. And final item, number 25, Airbnb policy, Councilmember Alexander.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is coming forward anyway, isn't it, soon? Yeah, so why do we need to vote to bring it forward when it's already in the works and coming forward? It's coming, no, it's already planned to be at Planning Commission on the 13th. I vote no.
Taking a vote.
We're still voting here, John. Yeah. Yeah.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette? No. No, okay. Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Councilmember Calvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-1.
Thank you. I think we're all a little eager here tonight. So the next joint regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council, and the Mayor and the City Council acting as the successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, will be held on December 7th, 2022 at the Feldheim Central Library located at 555 West 6th Street, San Bernardino, California, 92401. Closed session will begin at 5:30 p.m. and open session will begin at 7 p.m. Hereby adjourn this meeting.